Chapter 40-36. Qi Shinu revealed his true face. His eyes were filled with murderous intent as he stared at the holy light martial intent. The chill in his eyes was enough to make one shudder. As the holy light martial intent looked at Qi Shinu, it couldn't help but be stunned and its entire body froze in place. The moment the crowd saw Qi Shinu's face, they were all stunned. Because the face that appeared in front of them was simply too ugly. Qi Shinu's head was very big, and his ears were very small. His face was full of wrinkles and his nose was completely flat. He looked 30% like a human and 70% like an ape. However, his eyes were very frightening. They were like an abyss that surged with a dark aura, making him look very gloomy. Nie Tian was also shocked. He had seen many strange people, but there weren't many that were as ugly as Qi Shinu. You! At this time, Qi Shinu suddenly sneered and laughed madly, because very soon I will become every single one of your nightmares. Qi Shinu, you! The holy light martial intent reacted. Its eyes trembled as it looked at Qi Shinu, but it didn't know what to say. Holy light martial intent, you better pray that you don't meet me on the martial stage. Qi Shinu suddenly turned around. His eyes were like sharp blades as he stared at the holy light martial intent and said, "Otherwise I will kill you." The holy light martial intent's eyes violently trembled. It was obviously greatly frightened. It took several steps back and almost couldn't stand still. It didn't know much about Qi Shinu, but for Qi Shinu to say such words in front of so many people, it was not as simple as a threat. The inherent prejudice of the angel race had created a monster. Holy light martial intent, it's your business who you want to kill. Qi Shinu laughed and looked at Xie Tianquang, but this Thunder Boy is much stronger than you. Even if he lost an arm, he will still kill you. The holy light martial intent opened its mouth, but couldn't say anything. Qi Shinu's words completely destroyed the last bit of arrogance it had. Ever since he was young, he had always been a genius who thought highly of himself. He had all sorts of halos above his head and received the attention and worship of countless people. But now, at the scene of the hidden dragon battle, he was belittled by Qi Shinu to the point that he was useless and couldn't even defeat a man with a broken arm. His pride and his martial heart had suffered a huge blow. He couldn't help but wonder if he was still a genius. Qi Shinu looked at the holy light martial intent and sneered. Without speaking, his figure flickered and he vanished like a ghost. Everyone's eyes trembled, and they only reacted after a long time. They couldn't help but feel that they hadn't had enough. No one would have thought that an internal conflict between the angels would draw out such a strange genius like Qi Shinu. Even though Qi Shinu's appearance was somewhat unsightly, one had to admit that his talents and strength were extremely terrifying. Even Nie Tian was now afraid of Qi Shinu. He had a premonition that Qi Shinu would become a huge obstacle for him in this hidden dragon battle. Following that, everyone's eyes locked onto the holy light martial intent and the other geniuses of the angel clan. Obviously, they hoped that they would continue to kill Emo and the others. "Boy, who are you?" The holy light martial intent calmed down a little and looked coldly at Xie Tianquang as he spoke in a low voice. "If you want to fight, then let's fight. What's with all this nonsense?" Xie Tianquang laughed coldly and arrogantly. "This is the hidden dragon battle. Our angel clan may let you off this time, but next time you won't be so lucky." The holy light martial intent's eyes darkened as it said coldly. Following that, the crowd of angel clan dispersed. The crowd couldn't help but sigh in disappointment. Although the holy light martial intent's words were ruthless, everyone could see that he was afraid in front of Xie Tianquang. Nie Tian checked on Xie Tianquang's condition and his expression eased up after he confirmed that the latter was fine. With Xie Tianquang's strength, his broken arm would recover in a few days. Following that, Nie Tian's figure flashed and came to Emo's side, indicating that the latter shouldn't be impulsive. Since the people of the Angel clan had temporarily stopped, they should stop before going too far. Although Nie Qingwan was seriously injured, her life wasn't in danger. "What's your name?" Emo's expression was cold as he looked at the Dark Angel Clan martial artist. "Yu Li." The corner of the martial artist's mouth twitched as his expression darkened. "Very good." Emo nodded and said, "If you and I have the chance to stand on the same stage, it will be a battle of life and death. I'll accompany you to the end." Yuli sneered and left. Emo clenched his fists tightly. The chill in his body only dissipated after a long time. The storm ended just like that. After Nie Tian confirmed that Nie Qingwan's life wasn't in danger, he temporarily placed her in the 9 extremities. Emo also entered the 9 extremities to accompany Nie Qingwan. Nie Tian gave the two some holy color rheumatism, hoping that they could use the power of rheumatism to seek an opportunity to break through. Although Nie Qingwan lost a match, it didn't mean that she would be eliminated. At most, she would have to forfeit the next 4 matches and enter the loser's bracket in the first stage. Following that, Nie Tian didn't hear his hidden dragon, so he casually watched the other matches on the other stages. "Nie Tian, it's your friend, Jun Jianxing." At this moment, Xie Tianquang's eyes flickered as he looked at one of the stages and shouted. Nie Tian looked up and saw Jun Jianxing standing on the stage. He stood there coldly like an unsheathed sword. But the next moment, Nie Tian's eyes trembled and his face darkened when he saw the figure standing opposite Jun Jianxing. He didn't expect Jun Jianxing's opponent to be the young master of the Myriad Sound Demon Palace, Gong Yuzigi. Gong Yuzigi, the young master of the Myriad Sound Demon Palace, ranked 4th on the Hidden Sky list. Nie Tian hadn't fought with this person before, but he had some conflicts with him. Back then, after he defeated Xiao Wanjie of the demon race, he wanted to kill him, but Gong Yuzigi appeared and stopped him. It was only after Mori Shire showed up that the two sides stopped fighting. Who would have thought that Jun Jianxing's first opponent would be Gong Yuzigi? Nie Tian's brows furrowed as he moved to the side of the arena. He wanted to see what the young master of the Myriad Sound Demon Palace had up his sleeve. "You're someone close to Nie Tian, so I won't kill you." On the stage, Gong Yuzigi spoke directly. His eyes flickered with a cold light, and his entire person was extremely sharp. What he meant was that he would definitely win this battle. "You have to beat me first," Jun Jianxing shouted in a cold voice. The Heaven's Punishment blade appeared in his hand, revealing its sharpness and soaring sword chi. "One move is enough to defeat you," Gong Yuzigi sneered when he felt the sharp sword chi coming at him. Then, the void in front of him shook strangely, as if there was an invisible force surging. Chapter 40-37. When Nie Tian saw Jun Jianxing's attack, his eyes trembled and he cried out in surprise. He could feel an invisible force surging in front of Gong Yuzigi. It was extremely powerful and made him feel threatened. Jun Jianxing obviously did not sense the danger, which was why he dared to attack. "Die!" On the arena, Jun Jianxing let out a low roar. His Heaven's Punishment blade shone brightly. Under the impact of the sword will, the void trembled slightly. A huge sword shadow pressed forward like a ferocious tiger. However, the next moment a strange scene happened. As the sword shadow fell, it suddenly stopped, as if it had encountered some kind of powerful resistance. It let out a low roar. Jun Jianxing was stunned by the scene in front of him. He could not help but frown and exclaim, "Danger!" At that moment, Nie Tian cried out in alarm, his eyes flickering with fear. In the next moment, the sword shadow rebounded and charged at Jun Jianxing. The sudden change of events made Jun Jianxing's expression change. He reacted instantly and dodged dozens of meters to the side. However, he was still one step too late. The sword shadow whizzed past and left a horrifying wound on his chest. At the same time, he was blasted out of the arena. "Damn it!" Jun Jianxing steadied himself. His face was a little pale, but he was not seriously injured. His eyes trembled and he let out a low roar. He did not expect Gong Yuzigi's technique to be so strange. What just happened? The crowd was also stunned by the scene in front of them. They had no idea what was going on. No one saw Gong Yuzigi make a move, but Jun Jianxing lost in such a strange way. The young master of the myriad sound demon palace is really good at controlling the power of sound waves. The judge looked at Gong Yuzigi and smiled faintly. There was a hint of fear in his praise. "Senior brother, you're flattering me," Gong Yuzigi responded humbly with a slight smile. The crowd heard their conversation, and their eyes trembled violently. They seemed to have understood something. The power of sound waves. So he was using the power of sound waves. He is the young master of the myriad sound demon palace. He is naturally proficient in the power of sound waves. The power of sound waves doesn't belong to the range of 9 elemental energies. This kind of power is formless yet powerful. It's extremely terrifying. No wonder Gong Yuzi was able to enter the 4th place of the Hidden Sky ranking. The crowd discussed among themselves as they looked at Gong Yuzigue with fear in their eyes. In everyone's eyes, Gong Yuzi was also one of the candidates for martial Kuei in this Hidden Dragon tournament. The power of sound waves? Nie Tian's face darkened as he frowned. He had met martial warriors with sound wave energy before, but those people were clearly not on the same level as Gong Yuzi. Gong Yuzigi easily defeated Jun Jianxing. His strength was not any weaker than Xiao Wanjie's. This kid is indeed difficult to deal with. He can actually release a sound wall so easily. At this moment, the fat cat's deep voice rang out. Sound wall. Nie Tian frowned in confusion. He had never heard of such a power. The sound wall is a powerful sound wave power. When the sound is concentrated to a high degree, it will become like a solid wall. The fat cat explained briefly and said, "This kid's cultivation isn't high, but he can easily create a sound wall. This shows his understanding and control of sound waves." Eyebrows furrowed, Nie Tian asked, "Is this sound wall very powerful?" "You've seen how terrifying the sound wall is." The corner of the fat cat's mouth twitched and he said, "According to my observation, this kid can release an even stronger sound wall. He might even have a more terrifying sound vortex." Nie Tian's eyes darkened as he looked at Gong Yuzigue. His face was obviously gloomy. Gong Yuzigue was also a strong opponent. It seemed that this hidden dragon tournament would be very difficult. "Nie Tian, I look forward to fighting with you." At this moment, a deep voice rang out in Nie Tian's consciousness. It was Gong Yuzigue. "I'll keep you company." Nie Tian smiled faintly and looked at Gong Yuzigue coldly. Gong Yuzigue's voice transmission was not only a provocation, but also an affirmation of his strength. Gong Yuzigue laughed. His body moved and he jumped off the stage. Next, the first stage of the tournament continued. Nie Tian's remaining 4 battles ended quickly. His 4 opponents weren't strong, and he won them easily. He won the first stage of the tournament with 5 consecutive wins and successfully entered the winners group. After watching for the whole day, he didn't see any amazing battles, and he didn't meet any worthy opponents. The first stage of the Hidden Dragon tournament ended in a day. There were about 20,000 warriors who entered the winners group, and the rest entered the losers group. Actually, the number of warriors in the winners group and the losers group were about the same. However, in the second stage, the treatment was much different. In the second stage of the tournament, the top 1,000 warriors in the winners group could advance, while only the top 200 warriors in the losers group could advance. After the winners and losers groups ended, all the warriors had 3 days to rest. 3 days later, the second stage of the tournament would begin. Because every martial artist had to go through 64 matches in the knockout round, it would last for about half a month. For half a month, the martial artists would have to compete non-stop until the top 1,200 martial artists who would advance to the third stage were decided. The crowd of warriors dispersed. Nie Tian, Xie Tianquang, and the others were also preparing to leave. You're Nie Tian, right? However, at this moment, a cold voice sounded, and a ghostly figure appeared in front of Nie Tian. You! Nie Tian looked at the black-robed figure and couldn't help but frown in surprise. Do you still want to fight? Xie Tianquang's face darkened when he saw that person, and he growled. The person who appeared in front of them was none other than the forbidden genius of the angel race, Qi Xinu. Kiddo, I don't want to kill you, but it doesn't mean I can't. Qi Xinu smiled coldly, and a strange light flickered in her dark eyes. Then bring it on. Xie Tianquang growled, cold and fearless. Little Quang. Nie Tian glanced at Xie Tianquang, signaling him not to be impulsive. Although Xie Tianquang was angry, he calmed down. Speak. What do you want from me? Nie Tian frowned and asked Qi Xinu. Looking at Qi Xinu's expression, it seemed that she came here just to find him. Something must have happened. Huadongtai asked me to find you, Qi Xinu said in a deep voice. He said that the Dragon Rebel Races man is in your hands, right? Lord of Vast Cloud City. Nie Tian's eyes darkened, and his expression changed. Chapter 4038. Many people avoided people like Qi Xinu. He came to find Nie Tian and directly asked for Ni Jiaming. His motive was obviously not pure. Ni Jiaming is my friend. Why are you looking for him? Nie Tian looked at Qi Xinu and said coldly. Friend. Qi Xinu laughed as if he didn't care about the word friend and said, Xinu wants to know in your eyes which is more important, your friend or your sister? Nie Tian frowned and his expression changed. What do you mean? Qi Xinu sneered and said, the girl that was taken by Huadongtai and given to the heaven-sacred pavilion, isn't that your sister? Roar. Nie Tian's eyes trembled as his expression changed. You know where she is. Coincidentally, when she was captured, I was discussing something with Huadongtai. Qi Xinu laughed and said, I am a very curious person, so when she was taken away by the people of the heaven-sacred pavilion, I followed them and happened to see where she was locked up. Where? Nie Tian's eyes narrowed as he nervously asked. Where is that Dragon Rebel Clan's boy? Qi Xinu sneered and asked back. Why are you looking for Ni Jiaming? Nie Tian's expression froze for a second before he calmed down and asked in a deep voice. I want to borrow something from him. Qi Xinu smiled again. What is it? Nie Tian couldn't see Qi Xinu's face, but he sensed a strange aura, so he asked in surprise. His life. Qi Xinu smiled playfully with a hint of mockery in her calmness. She said, I heard that Dragon and I and your sister are a pair of lovebirds with a bitter fate. In order to save your sister, he would be happy to exchange his life for hers. Nie Tian's expression was gloomy and he didn't say anything for a long time. That brat can always reincarnate. Isn't it a good deal to use his life in exchange for the life of his lover? Qi Xinu said with a cold glint in her eyes. Nie Tian's eyes couldn't help but tremble. He didn't expect that Qi Xinu even knew that the inverse sword inscription could reincarnate. It was obvious that Qi Xinu already had some understanding of Ni Jiaming. Otherwise, she wouldn't have gone straight to Nie Tian. No. After a moment of silence, Nie Tian spoke in a deep voice, coldly refusing. He really wanted to save Nieyuro, but if he had to use Ni Jiaming's life to save her, he would never agree to it. What a cruel brother! Qi Xinu was a bit surprised, but she immediately smiled and said in a strange tone, If Xinu had a sister, I wouldn't hesitate even if I have to exchange everyone's lives for her. You don't have to provoke me. I have my own principles. Nie Tian's face sank as he spoke in a heavy tone. Principles? Qi Xinu's eyes trembled as if she had just heard a joke. Using something that doesn't exist to restrict yourself, is there anything more stupid than this? Let's change the condition. Nie Tian frowned and said in a cold tone. Okay, let me see that Ni Jiaming brat, is that okay? Qi Xinu smiled evilly. Eyebrows furrowed, Nie Tian let out a cold laugh. Just to meet him? People like Qi Shinu didn't follow any principles, so he obviously couldn't be trusted. Since he wanted to kill Enai Jiaming, he wouldn't give up so easily. Talk to him about some things. As for what will happen next, I can't say for sure. Qi Shinu smiled strangely and said. Nie Tian frowned and thought for a bit, then he said, I can let you see him, but I must be there. Plus, I must know every word you say to him. He thought about it again and felt that Enai Jiaming had the right to know about Nie Yuro's matter. He believed that Enai Jiaming would make the right choice. However, he couldn't be sure what would happen next, so he must be there the whole time. Okay. Qi Shinu smiled faintly, very relaxed. Okay, then let's go. Nie Tian nodded slightly and looked much more relaxed, but there was an ominous feeling in his heart that he couldn't get rid of. Then, Nie Tian and the others followed Qi Shinu back to the Wan Yuan pavilion and went to Enai Jiaming's room. At this moment, Enai Jiaming had completely recovered. His aura was sharp and his spirit was unparalleled. The legendary dragon rebel Saint Lord really lives up to his name. Qi Shinu looked at Enai Jiaming with cold eyes and said in a deep voice, Nie Tian, who is he? Enai Jiaming frowned and asked coldly. He sensed a dark aura from Qi Shinu that posed a great threat to him. I am Qi Shinu, from the Qi clan. Qi Shinu smiled faintly with a playful expression. The Qi clan. Hearing the name, Enai Jiaming's eyes trembled and his expression changed. He seemed to be in a panic. Seeing this, Nie Tian couldn't help but feel confused. Was the Qi clan related to the Dragon Rebel clan? Well, let's talk. Qi Shinu laughed, appearing very confident. How much do you know? Enai Jiaming frowned and asked in a deep voice. I know everything I need to know. Qi Shinu smiled and said, It seems that the Dragon Rebel Saint Lord's memory has recovered well. You can remember many things from the past. This saves me a lot of trouble. I will give you what you want. Enai Jiaming frowned and his eyes suddenly changed when he looked at Qi Shinu. He said in a deep voice, Then, what can you give me? I can give you what you want the most. The black robe on Qi Shinu's head shook and she said, The girl you think about day and night. Enai Jiaming's expression changed. He immediately reacted and screamed, You know where Ro-Er is? I will take you to that girl and I promise to save her. Qi Shinu smiled again and said, Then can you promise to give me what I want? Deal. Enai Jiaming's eyes trembled and a touch of passion flashed in his eyes. He agreed without hesitation. I will remember what the Dragon Rebel Saint Lord said. Qi Shinu's eyes flickered and she nodded slightly. She said, Let's go. Where? Nie Tian frowned and asked in a deep voice. The forbidden area of the Heaven Law Sacred Pavilion, the forbidden sky of demon martial arts. Qi Shinu smiled faintly and dashed out. Nie Tian and Enai Jiaming looked at each other and followed her. Xie Tianquang and Jun Jianxing also followed her. Qi Shinu moved like a ghost and disappeared after leaving the Wan Yuan pavilion. However, she left a trace of her aura so that Nie Tian and the others could follow her closely. In the void, Nie Tian and Enai Jiaming walked side by side. He looked at Enai Jiaming and asked in a deep voice, Enai Jiaming, do you know what Qi Shinu wants? He wants my life. Enai Jiaming smiled faintly with a calm look on his face. Then why did you promise him? Nie Tian's expression changed and his heart sank. Trust me. Enai Jiaming didn't explain anything. He only said 3 words. Nie Tian frowned and didn't say anything else. Chapter 40-39. Though Qi Shinu and Enai Jiaming didn't talk much, Nie Tian could tell that the Qi clan and the Dragon Rebel tribe must have had an unusual past. He couldn't help but wonder if what Qi Shinu wanted was really Enai Jiaming's life. Somehow, he had a feeling that what Qi Shinu wanted was even greater. He didn't have much contact with Qi Shinu, but he could feel that this was a person who hid deeply and was good at scheming. A person like this was extremely terrifying. Nie Tian didn't want to provoke Qi Shinu, but the latter came to him first and he couldn't avoid it. He could only take it one step at a time. Qi Shinu brought Nie Tian's group and quickly left vast cloud sacred city. Nie Tian's group followed Qi Shinu closely and didn't dare to be careless. Half a day later, they came to a mountain range. The mountain range in front of them stretched for tens of thousands of miles. The forest was lush, the rocks were steep, and the peaks were numerous. Is this the place? Nie Tian frowned as he looked at the mountain range in front of him. He felt uneasy. I don't know. And Ai Jianming shook his head. His face was gloomy and there was a hint of nervousness in his eyes. Qi Shinu said that she was bringing them to the forbidden area of the heavenly sacred pavilion, the martial demon forbidden sky. But the mountain range in front of them didn't look like a forbidden area at all. Nie Tian's group didn't know anything about the martial demon forbidden sky, so they couldn't be sure if the mountain range in front of them was the martial demon forbidden sky or not. Right now, they could only listen to Qi Shinu's arrangement. Nie Tian, why do I feel that this mountain range is a bit strange? Is there something wrong? Jun Jianxing walked up and looked at Nie Tian uneasily. Jun Jianxing, I want you to wait here. If something happens to us, I will find a way to let you know. Then, you can inform Grandmaster Qing Qi. Nie Tian's eyes dimmed and he said heavily. Jun Jianxing was taken aback, obviously unwilling. But he didn't say much and nodded in agreement. Among them, he was the weakest. Even if he followed, he wouldn't be of much help and might even become a burden. Nie Tian's decision to let him stay here was the best arrangement. Then, Nie Tian left a stream of sword qi on Jun Jianxing's body. As long as it was within 10,000 miles, Nie Tian had a way to make the sword qi resonate. Hurry, catch up. At this time, Qi Shinu's voice was heard impatiently. Nie Tian and the others immediately followed and entered the mountain range. Not long after entering the mountain range, Nie Tian immediately felt that something was amiss. There was a restriction power in the air that was suppressing his Yuan meridian. It's a restrictive barrier. Xie Tianquang also sensed it and said nervously. Relax, this is the martial demon mountain range, an ancient battlefield from the beginning of the primordial era. Qi Shinu's voice was heard at this time. During the demon martial war, in order to minimize the damage caused by the war, both sides chose the demon martial mountain range with the demon martial restriction. Back then, the demon martial mountain range had a huge suppression on all martial artists and could suppress their strength below the sage realm. After such a long time, the demon martial restriction has weakened a lot, but it can still suppress the strength of martial artists to around the tribulation sage monarch. Such a powerful restriction. Nie Tian couldn't help but frown and exclaim after hearing Qi Shinu's words. The battlefield of the beginning of the primordial era was at least a few million years ago. This restriction had existed for such a long time, yet it still had such a powerful suppression power. There are many killing arrays and traps here. Follow me closely. Qi Shinu's stern voice was heard again, but his figure did not appear. His aura was much stronger than before. Nie Tian and the others followed the aura closely and sped up a lot. As they went deeper into the martial demon mountain range, Nie Tian finally understood why the Heavenly Tao Sacred Pavilion chose this place as the forbidden ground. The martial demon mountain range had a powerful natural restriction. Even powerful martial artists would be greatly suppressed after entering the mountain range. This undoubtedly greatly reduced the risk of the martial demon forbidden sky being destroyed. Another important reason was that the martial demon mountain range had all kinds of killing arrays and boundaries left behind during the Great War. It was extremely dangerous. Any martial artist whose strength was suppressed would have a very small chance of survival once they fell into a killing array or boundary. The martial demon forbidden sky seemed to have no defense, but in reality, it had an extremely strong defense. It was impossible for ordinary people to enter. What made Nie Tian feel strange was that Qi Shinu seemed to be very familiar with this place and easily avoided all the killing arrays. Moreover, They didn't encounter any guards along the way. Although the natural defense of the martial demon Forbidden Sky was very strong, it was impossible for there to be no guards at all. Nye Tian, there's something strange about Qi Shinu. At this moment, an eye jamming transmitted his voice to Nye Tian and said in a deep voice. Nye Tian responded without any reaction on his face. Then, they quickly arrived at the core of the martial demon mountain range, outside a hidden valley. The martial demon Forbidden Sky is in the valley. Qi Shinu's figure appeared at this moment. Her eyes under the black robe flickered strangely as she said in a deep voice. Qi Shinu, why are you so familiar with this place? Nye Tian frowned and asked directly. After the fight between Qi Shinu and Xie Tianquang, Nye Tian secretly asked around and found out about the former's situation. Qi Shinu was imprisoned by the Angel clan back then, so why was she so familiar with the martial demon Forbidden Sky? This is Shinu's own business. I don't think I need to explain it to you. Qi Shinu looked at Nye Tian and said with a cold smile. Nye Tian frowned as he didn't expect Qi Shinu to be so tough. That little girl is in the valley. Don't tell me you guys are afraid to enter? Qi Shinu's gaze swept across Nye Tian and an eye jamming. Her laughter carried a strong sense of mockery. You go first. An eye jamming frowned and said in a deep voice. Alright, then you guys better follow closely. Qi Shinu smiled sinisterly and took a step forward. Her figure was like a black ray of light as she entered the valley. Nye Tian and an eye jamming looked at each other and immediately followed. In the valley, a tower towered into the clouds, like a giant of the heavens and the earth. This tower was the forbidden area of the Heavenly Law Sacred Pavilion, the martial demon Forbidden Sky. The martial demon Forbidden Sky is a 9-story tower. Many secrets of the Heavenly Law Sacred Pavilion are hidden in this giant tower. Qi Shinu looked at the giant tower before her and faintly smiled. The little girl you are looking for is on the 7th floor. The 7th floor. Nye Tian's eyes slightly trembled as he looked towards the tower. Chapter 40. From the moment Nye Tian and the others entered the martial demon mountain range to the martial demon Forbidden Heaven, their journey was too smooth. There were no obstructions at all. This was too strange. An eye jamming stared at the martial demon Forbidden Heaven with a gloomy face, evidently having the same worries. Humph. At this moment Qi Shinu sneered. Shinu is going to enter the tower, you guys must follow closely. As soon as she finished speaking, Qi Shinu disappeared like a ghost, turning into a black ray of light and entered the martial demon Forbidden Heaven. Nye Tian frowned and said to Xie Tianquang, Quang, wait outside the pagoda. No matter what happens, don't enter the pagoda. Then, he moved and followed after Xie Tianquang. At almost the same time, an eye jamming also entered the tower. Although Xie Tianquang was reluctant, he still stayed where he was. Nye Tian and an eye jamming walked side by side, following Qi Shinu's aura. When they entered the martial demon Forbidden Heaven, they actually did not encounter any defenses. It was as if the entire martial demon Forbidden Heaven was empty. An eye jamming, something is wrong here, we have to be careful. Nye Tian frowned and secretly transmitted his voice to an eye jamming. The more peaceful the martial demon Forbidden Heaven was, the more dangerous it was. At this moment, Qi Shinu's aura was still rising, heading towards the higher levels of the martial demon Forbidden Heaven. It seemed like Qi Shinu was very familiar with the entire martial demon Forbidden Heaven. Nye Tian, this guy seems to be luring us over. An eye jamming frowned and whispered nervously. Nye Tian answered. He obviously felt this too. However, Nyeyuro might be in the tower. Even if they knew there was danger ahead, they had to follow. Moments later, Nye Tian and an eye jamming arrived at the 6th level of the martial demon Forbidden Heaven, but they still did not encounter anyone. It was as if they came to an empty tower, not the forbidden grounds of the Heaven's Sacred Pavilion. Nye Tian's figure paused on the spot. They were about to enter the 7th level, and the uneasy feeling in his heart suddenly became much stronger. Nyetian, I sense Ro-Er's aura. Right at this moment, Jiaming's eyes suddenly trembled, and he cried out in surprise. Nyetian frowned as a strange look flashed across his eyes. At this moment, the expression on his face was not one of joy, but of intense worry. He smelled a trace of a conspiracy. However, at this moment, Jiaming moved and entered the 7th level. Oh no! Nyetian's eyes trembled and his heart sank. But in the next moment, he also followed. Nyeyuro's aura could not be fake. Jiaming had rushed over, so he had to follow. Boom! In the next moment, just as Nyetian entered the 7th level, an enormous pressure appeared. It was like a huge mountain falling down, causing him to feel his entire body sink, and he could no longer move forward. What a strong aura! Nyetian's face immediately changed and he cried out in shock. Next, the 9 dragon veins in his body began to circulate and the surging dragon energy burst out like tidal waves, battering the surrounding space. Roar! Then, a deep dragon's roar resounded in the air. An enormous dragon shadow appeared and forcefully broke through the oppressive aura. At the same time, Nyetian's body trembled and he spat out a mouthful of blood. His face immediately turned pale. The aura was extremely powerful, and the huge impact injured him. Nyetian. Then, Jiaming's figure appeared and he came to Nyetian's side. He was drenched in cold sweat and his expression was much worse than Nyetian's. Just now, he had also felt the pressure. It was with the help of Nyetian's strength that he was able to break through the imprisonment. Master of the Sky, Holy Lord Xianlong, you are indeed not simple. At that moment, a deep voice was heard. Then, a black-clothed figure appeared high up in the sky. His cold eyes were as cold as ice. He fixed his gaze on Nyetian and Jiaming with a playful look. Who are you? Where's Qi Shinu? Nyetian's eyes flickered as he looked at the man. I am the guardian of the 7th level of the martial demon Forbidden Heaven. You can call me Demon Martial 7. The person snickered and said, to be able to break through the 7th level's pressure, you are indeed not simple. Where is Qi Shinu? Jiaming's expression was dark as he growled coldly. Demon Martial 7 sneered and said, should I say that you are naive or stupid? You believe Qi Shinu's words? Nyetian and Jiaming's expression changed at the same time. Their minds were blown. Just as expected, Qi Shinu was lying to them. Before entering the martial demon Forbidden Heaven, they had already noticed that something was wrong. But Nyeyuro was far too important to them. Even though they knew it was a trap, they had no choice but to jump in. Just then, Qi Shinu's cold laughter was heard. Nyetian and Jiaming, tricking you here was much easier than Qi Shinu thought. Qi Shinu. Jiaming growled. His eyes were bloodshot and murderous like a beast that was about to go berserk. Where is Ro-Er? You're like a turtle in a jar, yet you're still worried about that little girl. Sacred Lord Xianlong, you sure are infatuated. Inside the giant tower, Qi Shinu's laughter was heard by Jiaming's ears. It was filled with mockery and disdain. Where is Ro-Er? Jiaming's blood boiled as he roared again. Sacred Lord Xianlong, I am a man of my words. I will take the little girl away and ensure her safety. Qi Shinu snickered. As for you and Nyetian, you can stay in the martial demon Forbidden Heaven. Bastard! Jiaming roared as his blood boiled and his eyes burned with a terrifying flame. All right, I won't play with you anymore. I will leave the rest to Demon Martial 7. Qi Shinu snickered and the last of his aura disappeared. Damn it! Jiaming roared and his silhouette moved. His dragon Qi surged like a dragon that wanted to break out of the abyss. Qi Shinu wanted to take Nyeyuro away. He would make Qi Shinu stay even if he had to risk his life. How dare you act so presumptuously in front of me? However, at this moment, Demon Martial 7 took one step forward and unleashed his aura. He slammed his palm down and a terrifying palm shadow appeared like a mountain crashing down on Enai Jianming. Bang! In the next second, a muffled sound came from the void as Enai Jianming's silhouette flew backward. Nie Tian's eyes quivered as he moved to catch Enai Jianming. Enai Jianming, don't be impulsive. Nie Tian stabilized Enai Jianming and then focused his mind. His divine sense connected to the eternal night demon fox and directly broke through the divine sense shackles of the demon martial forbidden heaven. He sent a voice transmission to Xie Tianquang and said, "Tianquang, stop Qi Xinu at all costs." Chapter 40-41. Outside of the martial demon forbidden sky, Xie Tianquang's eyes were filled with murderous intent. His entire being was like a ferocious beast, emitting a murderous aura. Nie Tian had asked him to stop Qi Xinu at all costs, which was exactly what he wanted. He felt wronged from the previous battle. This was the perfect time for him to get his revenge. Qi Xinu, right? Xie Tianquang's eyes trembled and surged with the power of thunder. His lips curled into an insolent smirk as he said in a deep voice, "If I don't show my might, you'll think I'm a sick cat." Saying so, Xie Tianquang's body shuddered as a towering aura was unleashed. Following this, an eerie force surged within his body. His broken arm regenerated perfectly in an instant. If Nie Tian were to see this, he would definitely not believe it. When a cultivator's martial body reached a certain level, as long as their vital parts were not destroyed, they would basically not die. Plus, their limbs and other parts could be regenerated. This was the powerful life force of a cultivator. However, to regenerate a broken arm in an instant like Xie Tianquang was too eerie. Even a peak Tianwu divine ancestor would not be able to do this. One had to know that even someone with a strong martial body like Nie Tian couldn't do this. Xie Tianquang was too terrifying. It was as if there was a whirlpool of life inside his body. "Thunder, open the net." Then, Xie Tianquang roared and unleashed the power of lightning from his body. Bolts of lightning soared into the sky like giant snakes and surrounded the entire martial demon forbidden sky. "Qi Xinu, if you can escape from me today, I won't be called Xie Tianquang." Xie Tianquang coldly laughed. His silhouette flashed as he stood in the air like a towering mountain, towering and insolent. "So you're from the 4 ancient sacred clans, no wonder you're so strong." At this time, a deep voice emerged from below. Qi Xinu's silhouette appeared with a pair of cold eyes. "It seems like I will have to play with you. I won't stop until I die." Xie Tianquang snickered as the power of lightning surged around him, sealing the space around him to prevent Qi Xinu from escaping. "I'll keep you company." Qi Xinu snickered and moved. Countless rays of black light appeared in the sky and charged towards the lightning net. At the same time, on the 7th floor of the martial magic forbidden heaven. "Two little ants, you're destined to stay in the forbidden heavens of demon martial sect today." Mo Wu Chi's eyes were filled with killing intent as he spoke in a deep voice. It was as though he could no longer control the killing intent radiating from his body. "Whoever dares to stop me shall die." Although Enai Jianming was injured, he was extremely violent. He spoke in a cold voice, and the dragon qi surged endlessly. "Enai Jianming, I've already told Xie Tianquang to stop Qi Xinu. Don't worry." Nie Tian said in a deep voice, "This guy is a bit strange. We must not be careless." "Humph." Mo Wuqi sneered. "Even I may not be able to defeat Qi Xinu. The people you brought cannot stop him." In the demon martial mountain range, Qi Xinu was an extremely terrifying existence. Demon Martial 7 had personally witnessed Qi Xinu killing a Tianjue Holy Emperor powerhouse in the Demon Martial Forbidden Heaven. The Demon Martial Mountain Range was enveloped in the Demon Martial Forbidden Heaven. All the martial artist's strength was suppressed to around the level of a heavenly tribulation holy king. This made Qi Xinu an almost undefeatable existence. Qi Shinu's true identity was the guardian of the 8th floor of the demon martial forbidden heaven. His status was slightly higher than Mo Wuqi's. There were 9 floors in the demon martial forbidden heaven, and each floor had a guardian. The strength of each floor's guardian was about the same, but overall, the higher the floor, the stronger the guardian's strength. Every floor of magic martial forbidden heaven was relatively independent. Qi Shinu only informed Magic Martial 7, so the guardians of the other floors did not appear. Although Nye Tian and Ni Jiaming were in the tower, they did not actually enter the tower. The demon martial forbidden heaven was connected in the middle, so Nye Tian and Ni Jiaming were only in the 7th floor's passage. Not necessarily. Nye Tian looked at Mo Wuqi and sneered. Qi Shinu was indeed very strong. Ordinary martial artists could not stop him, but Nye Tian believed that Xie Tianquan could. Master of the Sky, you are very calm. I wonder if you can still be this calm when I take the heart of the sky from you. Mo Wuqi laughed coldly as he moved. His aura towered up into the skies as he blasted out with a palm strike, causing the surrounding space to sink in an instant. The oppressive force suddenly fell and rushed towards Nye Tian and Ni Jiaming. Sacred heaven-defying sword, heaven and earth unite, yin and yang combine. Nye Tian saw this and roared. The soul of the sky opened and the sword of the sky shot into the sky. The shadow of the sword howled like a mad dragon. Boom! At the same time, Ni Jiaming also made his move. The dragon chi surged like the sea and a dragon's shadow appeared. Boom! Boom! In the next moment, the 3 enormous forces collided with each other, and 2 explosions were heard. Then, Nye Tian and Ni Jiaming's figures were sent flying backward, blood spurting everywhere. Ni Jiaming, are you okay? Nye Tian steadied himself and looked at Ni Jiaming nervously. I'm fine. Ni Jiaming was covered in blood, but his eyes were determined as he said in a low voice. This guy doesn't seem to be affected by the prohibition. Strange. Nye Tian frowned, confused. Mo Wuqi's cultivation level was not high. He was only at the 9th level of Tianyi, but his strength was not suppressed at all. In fact, it was even enhanced. Qi Shinu had said that the prohibition could suppress all martial artists. Even someone as strong as Nye Tian was greatly suppressed, but Mo Wuqi was not affected at all. Strange. Humph. Demon Martial 7 seemed to know what Nye Tian was thinking, and said with a cold smile, Kid, the restrictive spells of the Demon Martial sect have a great suppressive effect on foreign cultivators like you. However, for people like me who were born in the forbidden heaven of the Demon Martial sect, and have never stepped out of the forbidden heaven of the Demon Martial sect, the restrictive spells of the Demon Martial sect are not a form of suppression. Instead, it helps me. Nye Tian's eyebrows furrowed as he suddenly understood. Many prohibition only suppressed outsiders. If a martial artist was born in a prohibition, his body would naturally produce a power of balance that was compatible with the prohibition. Mo Wuqi was born in the forbidden sky of demon martial arts and had never stepped out of the forbidden sky of demon martial arts in his life. Therefore, he had a natural adaptation to the forbidden sky of demon martial arts. Furthermore, his martial body was connected to the forbidden sky, which allowed him to borrow the power of the forbidden sky. However, his martial talent was also suppressed by the prohibition. His strength would always be below the Tribulation King Sage. Someone like Mo Wuqi became a martial artist of the Forbidden Heaven. The 9 guardians of the Forbidden Heaven, other than Qi Shinu, were all martial artists of the Forbidden Heaven. Qi Shinu, an outsider, was able to become a protector of MCMAU. Moreover, she was a protector of the 8th floor. Her strength was evident. Chapter 40-42. Outside of the martial demon forbidden sky, thunder rumbled and darkness wreaked havoc. Boom! In the air, the thunderstorm danced like a giant snake and clashed with a giant black palm. The air trembled as if it was about to explode. Xie Tianquang's figure shuddered as he was pushed back a few thousand meters by the shockwave. On the other side, Qi Shinu's figure drifted like a black ray of light. Kid, you're much stronger than before. Interesting. In the void, Qi Shinu's playful laughter resounded and reverberated in the void, sounding harsh and harsh to the ears. You're not stupid after all. I'm already a heavenly tribulation saint king. Xie Tianquang wiped the blood from his lips and smirked coldly. The power of thunder around him didn't weaken at all. Instead, it became stronger. That's right, he broke through from the 9th level of heavenly righteousness to the 1st level of the heavenly tribulation. Xie Tianquang was born with the cultivation of the 9th level of heavenly righteousness. However, his mind had always been suppressed by the thunder ape, causing him to be in a berserk state and unable to cultivate. Plus, he had been imprisoned for a long time, so his strength didn't improve at all. A few days ago, his mind recovered and the energy he had accumulated over the years quickly gave him the opportunity to break through. Not long ago, when he was fighting against Qi Shinu, he already felt signs of a breakthrough. Just now, he unknowingly broke through. A tribulation sage? Qi Shinu looked at Xie Tianquang fearlessly. Instead, he laughed and said, Shinu would like to see how capable a genius from one of the 4 ancient sacred clans is. I won't disappoint you. Xie Tianquang roared. His body trembled as the power of 10,000 bolts of lightning exploded. Like terrifying tentacles, they slammed towards Qi Shinu. Qi Shinu's movement technique was strange and ghostly. He weaved through the endless net of thunder and turned into a ray of black light that headed towards Xie Tianquang. Xie Tianquang suddenly felt threatened. His eyes quivered and he quickly retreated. At the same time, a thunderstorm appeared in an attempt to stop Qi Shinu. Whoosh! However, in the next second, a strange ray of black light appeared and forcefully cut open the thunderstorm. It then attacked Xie Tianquang. Xie Tianquang suddenly sensed the aura of death, and his expression changed drastically as he dodged several meters to the side. The sharp blade brushed past his chest, leaving a bloody wound on his body. Blood instantly dyed half of his body red. That was close. He steadied himself. His face was filled with shock and lingering fear. Fortunately, he reacted in time. Otherwise, that black light would have been enough to take his life. Qi Shinu's methods were too frightening, strange, and terrifying. However, Xie Tianquang wasn't afraid at all. Instead, his aura rose and the power of lightning surged, forming a lightning shield around him. This time, he would fight Qi Shinu to the bitter end. Little kid, you really don't care about your life. Qi Shinu looked at Xie Tianquang and smiled coldly with a playful expression. At the same time, on the 7th floor of the martial magic forbidden heaven, boom! In the void, a thunderous explosion sounded out. Mo Wu Qi's aura was incomparably violent, rolling up into the sky, extremely terrifying. This guy's aura is several times stronger than before. Nie Tian's eyes trembled and his heart sank. He didn't think that Mo Wu Qi would be this powerful. Ants, it's time to end this. Mo Wu Qi sneered. His aura instantly skyrocketed to the extreme. He then slammed down with his palm, sending a wave of murderous energy towards Nie Tian and Enai Jianming. Nie Tian's eyes flickered. At this moment, he felt powerless, as if no matter how he resisted, he couldn't change the outcome. Nie Tian, double dragon soaring sky. At this moment, Enai Jianming let out a deep roar and unleashed the chi of the reversed dragon. A terrifying shadow of a dragon appeared, as if it could kill everything in its path. Die! Nie Tian's eyes flickered and he also let out a deep roar. Instantly, an endless amount of chi of the dragon husbandry surged out. The roar of the dragon shook the sky and the shadow of the dragon soared into the sky. Boom! Boom! In the void, 2 giant dragons dashed out, their roars shaking the sky. Terrifying aura was unleashed, extremely terrifying. Mo Wu Qi's figure stood still, but he seemed to have sensed something and couldn't help but exclaim. Boom! Boom! At this moment, the two dragon shadows collided with the enormous power. An explosion was heard, and it seemed as if the entire magic martial forbidden heaven was shaking because of it. The next moment, Mo Wuqi felt the power rushing toward him. His eyes flickered and he was pushed back hundreds of meters. How is this possible? When he stabilized his body, his eyes trembled in fear. He couldn't believe what he had just seen. Nie Tian and Enai Jiaming worked together to block his all-out attack and even pushed him back. How was this possible? He was a martial artist of the forbidden heaven. How could Nie Tian and Enai Jiaming burst out with such terrifying power when they were under the suppression of the magic martial forbidden heaven? The chi of the dragon husbandry and the chi of the dragon husbandry are resonating. Nie Tian steadied his body. His eyes trembled and he was overjoyed. He didn't expect the chi of the dragon husbandry and the chi of the dragon husbandry to resonate. These two powers, one was the existence of the reverse dragon, and the other was the extreme of the dragon husbandry. Shouldn't they be polar opposites? Pfft! At this moment, Enai Jiaming's body suddenly trembled, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. Enai Jiaming, are you all right? Nie Tian moved and came to Enai Jiaming's side. He couldn't help but feel nervous when he saw Enai Jiaming's pale face and unstable aura. It seemed that the dragon husbandry's resonance had hurt Enai Jiaming greatly. Enai Jiaming was already injured, and with the recoil, he was in danger. Nie Tian, do you trust me? Enai Jiaming's eyes trembled, and he looked at Nie Tian and asked in a deep voice. What do you mean? Nie Tian noticed that Enai Jiaming's expression was not right. His expression changed, and he asked in shock. If you trust me, let me borrow your chi of the dragon husbandry. Enai Jiaming's eyes were filled with a strange light, and he said in a deep voice. What are you going to do? Nie Tian felt the determination in Enai Jiaming's eyes, and his heart sank. This guy's power hasn't reached its limit. Even if we join forces, we can't escape. Enai Jiaming's eyes darkened and he said, the only way now is to let me merge the power of the chi of the dragon husbandry and kill him. This. Nie Tian's eyes trembled, and he couldn't help but hesitate. Speaking of which, he didn't have much contact with Enai Jiaming, but he had absolute trust in the latter. Enai Jiaming said that he wanted to merge the chi of the dragon husbandry, which was too crazy. Previously, Enai Jiaming was almost unable to withstand the dragon husbandry's resonance, so how could he withstand the powerful oppression of the chi of the dragon husbandry? If it was Nie Tian's martial constitution, he might be able to withstand the double oppression of the chi of the dragon husbandry and the chi of the dragon husbandry. However, the problem was that Nie Tian didn't know how to merge Enai Jiaming's chi of the dragon husbandry. Die, you ant! At that moment, Mo Wuqi roared, and his figure swooped down. Suddenly, a terrifying palm shadow appeared, and the monstrous power seemed to be able to destroy everything. Chapter 40-43. Boom! Inside the forbidden sky of demon martial arts, Nie Tian's dragon aura surged violently like a raging wave. The aura was overwhelming. Seeing this, Enai Jiaming's eyes lit up. He waved his hands in the air and absorbed the dragon chi. Boom! In the next instant, the opposing dragon chi in his body surged out. The two powers merged in the air, unleashing an unprecedentedly mighty aura. Nie Tian's eyes trembled and he was shocked. He did not expect the dragon chi and the dragon mu chi to merge to produce such a terrifying power. However, at the same time, Enai Jiaming was under the pressure of the two powers. Wounds began to appear on his body, and he was covered in blood, as if he was bathing in a blood spring. Oh no! Nie Tian saw this and sensed Enai Jiaming's body. He knew something was wrong. Enai Jiaming's martial body was not strong to begin with. Under such strong pressure, it was impossible for him to withstand it. Nie Tian, promise me that you will save Ro Er. At that moment, Jiaming said in a deep voice. His eyes were filled with determination. Nie Tian was startled. He then reacted and yelled, Jiaming, what are you doing? I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. Jiaming smiled and said, Nie Tian, please accept my reverse dragon soul later. Dragon spirit? Nie Tian was startled again and his eyes looked strange. How could he not see that Jiaming was prepared to die together with the 7 demons of demon martial arts? Die. At that moment Jiaming roared and moved. The dragon chi of Zhou Long was like a raging wave, surging violently and terrifying. Roar. In the air, a low roar of a dragon rang out. After that, a gigantic dragon silhouette appeared, as though it had taken on a corporeal form. It soared up into the sky as a violent aura gushed forth, as though it wanted to devour and kill everything in its path. How is this possible? High up in the sky, Missouri Wu Qi instantly felt the crazy killing intent coming at him. His eyes could not help but tremble as he cried out in shock. Even in his wildest dreams, he had never imagined that Jianming would be able to erupt with such power in an instant. At this moment, he felt an extremely intense aura of death. Could it be that he, the guardian of the Forbidden Sky, was going to die in the martial demon Forbidden Sky today? Bang! At this moment, the gigantic dragon silhouette collided with the gigantic palm silhouette. A thunderous sound rang out in the air, as though the heavens and earth were about to shatter. After which, a boundless amount of energy gushed out in all directions, crazily wreaking havoc. This! Nie Tian's eyes trembled when he felt the violent impact coming at him, and he immediately retreated at full speed. He did not expect that Jiaming and Devil Martial 7's ultimate clash would actually have such power. Roar! Following that, the roar of a dragon pierced through the sky. The gigantic dragon actually erupted with a frightening amount of power, directly shattering the gigantic palm. Then, it charged towards the MCMAU-7 maniac. No! Mo Wu Qi suddenly sensed that something was wrong. His eyes trembled in shock. The panic in his heart was perfectly written on his face, and he shouted loudly. However, it was all too late. In the next instant, the demonic dragon soared into the sky and whizzed past. The figure of MCMAU-7 was directly crushed, leaving no bones behind. MCMAU-7, the guardian of the 7th level of the martial demon Forbidden Sky, the cultivator that the Heavenly Law Sacred Pavilion spent countless resources to nurture, died tragically just like that. When Nie Tian saw this scene, his eyes couldn't help but tremble. He was extremely shocked. MCMAU-7's cultivation was originally higher than theirs, and he had a natural advantage in the martial demon Forbidden Sky. Yet, he actually died in the hands of Jiaming. It was too terrifying. The power that erupted from Jiaming's fusion of 2 types of energy was incomparably terrifying. Jiaming. At this moment, Nie Tian suddenly looked at Jiaming. The latter's body was trembling, dripping with blood, and he was on the verge of collapsing. Nie Tian, remember my words, the reverse dragon soul reversal, 9 out of 10 chances of survival. Whether I can resurrect from the reverse dragon soul or not, it's all up to you. Suddenly, Jiaming turned around, a pair of eyes staring at Nie Tian, and said in a deep voice, Reverse dragon soul reversal, 9 out of 10 chances of survival. Nie Tian's eyes trembled, and his heart was filled with shock. Bang! In the next moment, Jiaming's body trembled violently, and directly exploded, turning into a bloody light and dissipating. Jiaming! Nie Tian was stunned by the scene in front of him, and could not help but let out a low roar. Jiaming's words were still echoing in his mind, and at this moment, he had died a tragic death. Reverse dragon soul. In the next moment, Nie Tian's eyes suddenly trembled, and he exclaimed. At this moment, he saw a black vortex floating in midair, releasing an extremely strong reverse dragon chi. Nie Tian's figure moved, and he stretched out his hand, holding the reverse dragon soul in his hand. At the moment when the reverse dragon soul was in his hand, he immediately felt a strong aura impact his martial body, causing his entire body to tremble. Such a powerful aura! Nie Tian's eyes trembled, and his expression was filled with shock. He actually felt that the reverse dragon chi in the reverse dragon soul seemed to be stronger than Nie Jiaming's aura. How is this possible? Nie Tian held the reverse dragon soul and sensed the aura within it, and could not help but be shocked. The reverse dragon chi in the reverse dragon soul was extremely surging, as if there was a reverse dragon ocean within it. The reverse dragon soul was formed after Nie Jiaming's death, so why was the reverse dragon chi in it stronger than Nie Jiaming himself? This reverse dragon soul is related to Nie Jiaming's resurrection. I must keep it safe. After a while, Nie Tian became cold and said in a deep voice. Nie Tian kept Nie Jiaming's words in mind. The reverse dragon soul, and 9 out of 10 chances of survival. It seemed that the reverse dragon soul only gave Nie Jiaming a possibility of resurrection, and the chance of resurrection was not too high. Nie Jiaming did not say how to resurrect him. Maybe I can get some information from Qi Xinu. Nie Tian kept the reverse dragon soul and said in his heart. The situation was urgent just now, so Nie Jiaming did not have time to say too much. As for how to resurrect Nie Jiaming, Nie Tian could only do it himself. Nie Jiaming and Qi Xinu had a conversation earlier, and Qi Xinu obviously knew something. Moreover, Qi Xinu wanted Nie Jiaming's life, so it was probably because of the reverse dragon soul. I hope Xie Tianquang stopped Qi Xinu. Nie Tian frowned and moved towards the exit of Martial Magic Forbidden Sky. There were 9 levels in Martial Magic Forbidden Sky, and each level was relatively independent. Even if the guardian of the 7th level died, it would not alarm the other levels. It could only be said that Qi Xinu and Mo Wuqi were overconfident, and did not expect Nie Jiaming to kill Mo Wuqi. At the same time, outside Martial Magic Forbidden Sky, the bloody battle between Xie Tianquang and Qi Xinu continued. Qi Xinu stood in the void, and her eyes under the black robe were surging with cold and murderous intent. On the other side, Xie Tianquang was covered in blood, but the aura around him was very powerful. The power of thunder was violent, and giant thunderbolts danced in the sky like giant snake. Chapter 40-44. Boom, boom, boom. In the sky, thousands of thunderbolts crashed down on Qi Xinu. However, the latter was not afraid at all. Instead, she dashed over. Seeing this, Xie Tianquang retreated. Rays of thunderbolts formed a shield in front of him and enveloped his entire body. Bang! But at this time, Qi Xinu slapped out with her palm. A black blade appeared out of thin air. It was incomparably sharp and suddenly descended, directly penetrating the thunder shield. Wretch! In the next second, the sound of flesh being sliced was heard. Then, Xie Tianquang was flung backward and left a bloody trail in the sky. At the same time, a soft force appeared and caught Xie Tianquang in the air. Nie Tian. Xie Tianquang steadied himself and looked into the sky. The first person he saw was Nie Tian. Are you okay? Nie Tian's lips twitched. In a flash, he arrived next to Xie Tianquang. Currently, Xie Tianquang was covered in blood. There was a fist-sized hole in his chest. If it was just a little bit more, he would have died on the spot. Though he had broken through to the first level of the God's trial, he was still no match for Qi Xinu. I won't die. Xie Tianquang laughed without fear. Thank you. Leave the rest to me. Nie Tian smiled. After confirming that Xie Tianquang's life wasn't in danger, he was relieved. Then, he suddenly lifted his head. His eyes were like sharp blades that locked onto Qi Xinu. At this moment, Qi Xinu was also looking at Nie Tian in shock. He didn't think that Nie Tian would walk out of the Demon Martial Forbidden Sky. Could it be that Demon Martial 7 failed? But how was that possible? With Nie Tian and Nie Jiaming's capabilities, there was no way they could have won against Demon Martial 7. Qi Shinu, are you surprised to see me come out alive? Nie Tian's lips twitched as he spoke coldly. Nie Tian, I really didn't expect you to come out alive. Qi Shinu calmed down a lot and said eerily, and I Jiaming didn't come out with you. It seems like he died together with the demon martial arts 7. Although he didn't really believe such a fact, it was the only reasonable explanation. Mo Wu Qi is indeed dead, but Ni Jiaming is not. Nie Tian smiled faintly. Then, something appeared in his hand. He left this behind. The reverse dragon soul. Qi Shinu's pupils shrunk at the sight of the reverse dragon soul. Nie Tian's eyes darkened. This guy really knew about the reverse dragon soul. Qi Shinu, this is what you want to get from Ni Jiaming, right? Nie Tian smiled faintly and said with a playful look. Nie Tian, give me the defying dragon soul, and I'll give that little girl back to you. How about it? Qi Shinu's eyes flashed as she said in a deep voice. Do you think I'll believe your words? Nie Tian's expression darkened as he said coldly, If you don't want to die, then give me my sister. Humph. Qi Shinu sneered and said with disdain, You? Although Xie Tianquang was Nie Tian's follower, in Qi Shinu's eyes, Nie Tian was far weaker than Xie Tianquang. Even Xie Tianquang lost to him, so why would she be afraid of Nie Tian? Just me. Nie Tian Tianling sneered and stepped forward. The energy of a dragon surged around his body. At the same time, 9 snake-like chains appeared around his body. They were the chains of the heavenly Tao. Is that all? Qi Shinu sneered and said, Your strength is far from that little doll's. Is that so? Nie Tian smiled strangely as an evil light surged in his eyes. You're courting death, Qi Shinu bellowed. Then, she moved and charged towards Nie Tian. As long as he killed Nie Tian, the reverse dragon soul would naturally be his. Watch out. Xie Tianquang's eyes shuddered violently as he screamed. He knew how terrifying Qi Shinu was. Could Nie Tian stop it? Nie Tian Tianling stood still in the air. He obviously knew that the energy of a dragon and the chains of the heavenly Tao alone could not stop Qi Shinu. However, it would be a different story if the reverse dragon soul was added. As a thought entered Nie Tian's mind, he stimulated the renegade dragon soul with his soul. Immediately afterwards, strands of renegade dragon qi rushed out and merged with the dragon shepherd qi around him. Following that, the fusion of the dragon opposing aura and the dragon herding aura surged onto the heavenly law shackles like 9 berserk dragons. Qi Shinu, who was in the air, suddenly felt a terrifying impact. His eyes couldn't help but tremble as he uttered a cry of surprise. At this moment, the 9 chains of the heavenly Tao charged forward and instantly trapped Qi Shinu within. Qi Shinu immediately sensed something was amiss and screamed. His body shuddered as waves of evil dark energy surged out and attacked the chains of the heavenly Tao. However, the chains of the heavenly Tao were extremely powerful against the dark energy and could not be broken. Restrain. In the next second, Nie Tian's lips twitched as the chains of the heavenly Tao tightened and trapped Qi Shinu. Xie Tianquang sucked in a breath of cold air, completely at a loss for word. Qi Shinu's strength was restrained by Nie Tian in a single move. This was too strange. What kind of power did Nie Tian use? Why was it so terrifying? Nie Tian, you! Qi Shinu's eyes trembled as he roared furiously. What about me? Nie Tian smiled as he wiped the blood from his lips. The power of the fusion of the 2 energies was indeed terrifying. Even with Nie Tian's powerful martial physique, he still vomited blood from the pressure of the 2 energies. One could imagine how much power the Ni Jiaming had to withstand earlier. Moreover, Nie Tian could clearly feel that the 2 energies were suppressing each other and clashing against each other. Even with his current strength, he would be heavily injured if he were to withstand too much pressure. What kind of power is this? Qi Shinu's eyes trembled as he asked in a deep voice. Didn't you want the reverse dragon soul? Nie Tian smiled and said, Don't you know what kind of power the reverse dragon soul is? How is this possible? Qi Shinu's eyes trembled as he asked in shock, how can you use the power of the reverse dragon soul? Qi Shinu, hand over my sister now. Nie Tian's eyes darkened as he spoke in a cold tone with murderous intent. What if I don't? Qi Shinu was extremely ruthless and forceful. You think I won't dare to kill you? Nie Tian's face was ruthless as he spoke in a cold tone. Humph, Qi Shinu sneered and said, you think you can trap me? Nie Tian frowned. Did Qi Shinu still have the power to resist? Boom. At this time, Qi Shinu's body suddenly shook as a terrifying power surged out to attack the chains of the heavenly Tao. Angel's wings. Nie Tian's eyes trembled as he exclaimed. He almost forgot that Qi Shinu was from the angel race. Chapter 40-45. Nie Tian sensed that Qi Shinu was about to release his wings. His eyes trembled and his expression changed. Up until now, he had seen the wings of ice, the wings of fire, and the angel of light. However, he had never seen the wings of the Qi clan. Qi Shinu was known as the forbidden genius of the angel clan. The strongest power of the angel clan was the wings of the angel clan. Therefore, Qi Shinu's wings must be extraordinary. At this moment, Nie Tian suddenly frowned. He felt a strange blood energy permeate the air. It was as if Qi Shinu had turned into a river of blood. Immediately, he saw Qi Shinu's blood energy surging. The dark blood energy was like a restless beast that wanted to break through the shackles of the Tao of Heaven. At this moment, the fat cat suddenly said in horror, could this be, what is it? Nie Tian's eyes trembled. The fat cat was shocked twice. It was obvious that it had thought of something terrifying. Infernal blood wings. The fat cat cried out in horror. Its face froze. Infernal blood wings? Nie Tian was taken aback, his face filled with astonishment. Boom. At this moment Qi Shinu's body shook. Suddenly, a violent power was released. The aura was dark and bloody. It was like a black tentacle surging in a blood spring. Nie Tian's heart sank when he saw this. He immediately tightened the shackles of the Tao of Heaven. Nie Tian, you can't trap me. Qi Shinu's black robe lifted up, revealing an ugly face. Its eyes turned red and dark. On its back, a pair of dark red infernal blood wings appeared. Suddenly, the void around began to shake. The 9 shackles of the Tao of Heaven were shaking as if they were about to collapse. How? Nie Tian's expression flickered as he exclaimed, how is this possible? He didn't think that Qi Shinu's angel wings would be so terrifying. The angel wings that Fat Cat had called the infernal blood wings were actually much more formidable than the angel wings of Emo and the holy light martial intent. Moreover, Qi Shinu had 5 pairs of dark blood wings on his back. For Qi Shinu to be a 5-winged angel, one could only imagine how terrifying her talents were. Boom. In the next second, Qi Shinu's body shook and 5 pairs of terrifying bloody wings suddenly bloomed. A surge of power surged into the sky and the shackles of the heavenly Tao shook violently. The surrounding space shook as if it couldn't hold on any longer. Nie Tian's eyes quivered. The qi of the dragon herder inside his body was released even more violently. It fused with the qi of the opposing dragon and added onto the heavenly shackles, forcefully suppressing Qi Shinu's bloody underworld wings. Puff! At the same time, Nie Tian's body trembled, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. The pressure of the 2 forces was too strong. Even someone as strong as Nie Tian couldn't bear it. What the hell is going on? Qi Shinu roared furiously when he was suddenly suppressed. His eyes became darker and gloomier, and his ugly face became hideous. He never thought that the power of the 5 pairs of bloody wings couldn't break free from the shackles of the heavenly Tao. Qi Shinu, let me ask you again. Are you going to let him go or not? Nie Tian asked coldly. His eyes were dark and his body was filled with murderous intent. "Nie Tian, if you kill me, you'll never see the dragon rebel saint again." Qi Shinu smiled ferociously and threatened. "Just as I thought." Nie Tian's heart shook, and a strange look flashed in his eyes. It seemed that he was right. Qi Shinu knew how to resurrect an eye jamming. "Are you threatening me?" But in the next second, Nie Tian smiled coldly. The shackles of the heavenly Tao tightened, and the power of the heavenly Tao seeped into Qi Shinu's body like sharp blades, causing wounds to appear on his body. At this moment, if Nie Tian wanted to, the shackles of the heavenly Tao could take Qi Shinu's life right away. "You really dare to kill me?" Qi Shinu felt the bone-piercing coldness. His eyes trembled as he screamed in fear. "You can try." Nie Tianling smiled and took a step forward. The shackles tightened again, and Qi Shinu became covered in blood. Qi Shinu felt Nie Tian's murderous intent. His expression changed and he growled, "I'll let him go." He could feel that Nie Tian wasn't just threatening him. He really wanted to kill him. Yes, Nie Tian did want to kill him. Qi Shinu knew how to resurrect an eye jamming, but this was no threat to him. If Qi Shinu knew how to resurrect an eye jamming, then the other members of the Qi clan must know as well. To Nie Tian, the most important thing right now was to save Nieyuro. "Qi Shinu, you better behave yourself." Nie Tianling smiled. Then 2 shackles of the heavenly Tao pierced through Qi Shinu's shoulders. Only then did he dare to slightly weaken the suppression. Restraining a tiger was the most important thing. Against someone like Qi Shinu, one cannot be merciful. "Nie Tian, you are ruthless." Qi Shinu howled in pain. His eyes were filled with anger, but there was nothing he could do. Then, he tremblingly took out a scroll and opened it. A ball of light rushed out and a figure appeared. It was Nieyuro. Nie Tian saw that the person before him was Nieyuro. His eyes quivered and he yelled. Then, his silhouette moved and he flew towards Nieyuro. However, right at that moment, Nie Tian suddenly sensed an evil aura, causing him to freeze and let out a cry of surprise. "Die!" Almost at the same time, Nieyuro suddenly lifted her head. Her eyes were bloodshot. She growled and stabbed her sword towards Nie Tian. Nie Tian's expression changed. He couldn't react in time, and could only barely dodge half a meter away. A sword ray whizzed out and pierced through his shoulder. It's me." He endured the pain and yelled. But Nieyuro seemed to have gone berserk. There was only extreme murderous intent in her eyes, as if she wanted to kill everything. Swoosh! Then, she stabbed her sword again. The sword's shadow was like lightning and attacked Nie Tian. Boom! On the other side, a terrifying thunderbolt appeared. Like a net that covered the sky, it shrouded towards Nieyuro. "Xie Tianquang, don't hurt her!" Nie Tian's eyes trembled and he yelled. Xie Tianquang's attack was not to be underestimated. Any one of his thunderbolts could kill Nieyuro. "Boss, don't worry. I know what I'm doing," Xie Tianquang said loudly. The thunderbolt only restrained Nieyuro and didn't hurt her. Break! But at this moment, Qi Shinu roared and the 5 pairs of dark blood wings spread out again. Dark blood force was released and attacked the heavenly Tao's shackles. Instantly, the void cracked. Chapter 40-46. Nie Tian was hit by the dark blood force and was forced to retreat dozens of meters before stabilizing himself. He was ambushed by Nieyuro just now and was careless. The heavenly shackles couldn't hold on and Qi Shinu actually broke free. However, Qi Shinu was heavily injured and was covered in blood. His body trembled as if he was about to fall. "Nie Tian, we will fight to the death." Qi Shinu stared at Nie Tian and said coldly. Then, her figure flashed and she left. He was too heavily injured and with Xie Tianquang by Nie Tian's side, it wasn't a wise choice to continue fighting. Nie Tian looked at the direction where Xie Tianquang disappeared with a gloomy expression and didn't chase after him. Xie Tianquang's movement technique was unpredictable and it was almost impossible to catch up to him. Moreover, They were in the martial demon mountain range, and there were killing arrays everywhere. If they chased after him, they might die if they weren't careful. However, Nye Tian didn't plan to let Qi Shinu go. He still needed to rely on this guy to revive an eye jamming. Boss! At this moment, Xie Tianquang suddenly yelled in panic. Nye Tian frowned and turned around to see Nye Yuro fainted with strange runes surging around her body and releasing a bloody aura. What's going on? Nye Tian moved to Nye Yuro's side with an ugly expression. I don't know either. Xie Tianquang shook his head and panicked. Nye Tian, this seems to be some kind of incantation. Hurry and take her away from here. At this moment, Fat Cat reminded Nye Tian. Okay, Nye Tian answered and carried Nye Yuro, preparing to leave. Nye Yuro losing control earlier should be related to the incantation on her body. Nye Tian and Xie Tianquang returned the way they came and didn't dare to be careless. Although they didn't know much about the martial demon mountain range, they could still go back the way they came. Soon, Nye Tian and Xie Tianquang left the martial demon mountain range and met up with Jun Jianxing before heading to the sacred city in the sky. About half an hour later, Nye Tian and the others returned to the holy city of the sky and soon arrived at the Myriad Yuan Pavilion. Entering the Myriad Yuan Pavilion, Nye Tian placed Nye Yuro in her room and quickly went to find Qing Qi. Qing Qi looked at the unconscious Nye Yuro. After carefully examining her, his face sank and he didn't speak for a long time. Senior Qing Qi, how is Ro-er? Nye Tian's heart sank when he saw Qing Qi's reaction. Nye Tian, she has been afflicted with a very sinister curse of blood corpse. Qing Qi frowned and said in a deep voice, I don't know much about this blood curse. I can only help her temporarily suppress it. If we want to completely remove it, we must find the person who cast the curse. Is she all right now? Nye Tian's eyes trembled as he continued to ask. She is safe for now. But I'm not sure how long I can help her suppress the blood curse. Qing Qi shook his head and said, You must find the person who cast the curse as soon as possible. If the blood curse breaks out again, I'm afraid she will become a blood corpse. Okay. Nye Tian didn't ask too many questions. He just nodded heavily. Since Qing Qi didn't have a good solution, he could only find Qi Shinu. However, Nye Tian felt that Qi Shinu might not be the one who cast the curse. But Qi Shinu definitely knew who the person who cast the curse was. Nye Tian, who is this lady to you? Qing Qi saw Nye Tian was very nervous, so he asked in a deep voice. She is my sister. Nye Tian nodded with a gloomy face. Qing Qi nodded slightly. Then, he suddenly thought of something and asked, Nye Tian, I heard you took the warrior of the dragon rebel tribe away. Why didn't he come back with you? He's dead. Nye Tian frowned and said in a deep voice. Dead? Qing Qi's eyes trembled. He couldn't help but be stunned. And Ai Jiaming was talented. It would be a pity if he died like this. But I will bring him back to life. Nye Tian nodded again. Then, he looked at Qing Qi and asked, Sir, how much do you know about the dragon rebel tribe? Not much. Qing Qi shook his head and said, It is said that the dragon rebel tribe is a very ancient race. A long time ago, they had a feud with the Qi tribe of the angel tribe. What feud? Nye Tian's eyes trembled and he asked in surprise. What he wanted to know was what had happened between the dragon rebel tribe and the Qi tribe. I don't know either. Qing Qi shook his head again and said with a wry smile, I'm afraid only the dragon rebel tribe and the Qi tribe know the feud between them. Nye Tian frowned and didn't say anything else. Then, Nye Tian asked Qing Qi to take care of Nye Yuro. Then, he left to prepare for the next match. Even though he was one of them now, the hidden dragon competition had to continue. Boss, leave that Qi Shinu guy to me. After walking out of the room, Xie Tian let out a wild laugh and said with a confident expression. You can find Qi Shinu? Nye Tian asked with a frown. He was surprised that Xie Tianquang suddenly called him boss. But it was nice to his ears. It reminded him of Jean de Bao. Xie Tianquang was an arrogant man, but he was shocked when he saw Nie Tian subdue Qi Xinu with one move. I left something on him. It will be easy to find him. Xie Tianquang chuckled with a sly smile. Nie Tian was stunned. He didn't expect Xie Tianquang to learn things so fast even though he had just regained his consciousness. But after some thought, he said, "Quang, rest and recover first. There is no need to find Qi Xinu right now." "That's fine. Anyway, that guy will appear during the Hidden Dragon competition." Xie Tian laughed wildly and nodded. Nie Tian was stunned again. Xie Tianquang could guess what he was thinking. He was worried that it might not be safe for Xie Tianquang to find Qi Xinu alone. Qi Xinu would probably continue to participate in the Hidden Dragon competition. It wouldn't be too late to find him then. One had to say that Xie Tianquang's growth in all aspects far exceeded Nie Tian's expectations. In the next few days, Nie Tian and the others rested well. Nie Tian studied the singularity but didn't make any progress. He decided that when the fourth stage of the Hidden Dragon competition was reached, he would forcefully fuse with the universe even if he couldn't break the universe seal. 3 days later, Nie Tian and the others returned to the Sky Plaza. Today was the start of the second stage of the Hidden Dragon competition. It would last for half a month. Every martial artist would have to fight 64 consecutive matches. Chapter 40-47. Xie Tianquang's face was confident and his eyes were filled with excitement. He looked like he would fight Qi Xinu to the death. "Don't be impatient. There's no need to clash with him right now." Nie Tian was calm and signaled Xie Tianquang not to be impulsive. This was the Hidden Dragon battle after all. It was not advisable to clash with Qi Xinu. After all, Qi Xinu was a member of the Angel Clan. If Nie Tian and the others made a move, the other Angel Clan warriors would probably join the fight as well, which would cause chaos. Nie Tian did not want to kill Qi Xinu. He only wanted to know who the person who placed the blood corpse curse on Yeyuro was. Qi Xinu most likely knew the method to revive an eye jamming. Therefore, unless it was absolutely necessary, Nie Tian would not kill Qi Xinu. "Alright, we'll let that brat jump around for a while." Xie Tianquang laughed wildly. His eyes were filled with sharpness. Nie Tian glanced at Xie Tianquang and couldn't help but smile. This guy was very confident. However, in Nie Tian's opinion, Xie Tianquang might not be Qi Xinu's match. At least, he could not defeat Qi Xinu without using the Thunder Ape. A moment later, a group of figures appeared in the sky. It was Heavenly Law Martial House's Zhou. He had arrived with the judges of the Hidden Dragon battle. "Everyone!" Zhou's voice rang out. A dignified aura surged out and the chaotic crowd immediately quieted down. Next up is the second stage of the Hidden Dragon battle, the elimination round. Zhou's eyes flashed like lightning as he swept over the audience and solemnly said, "The first stage has already divided the winners group and the losers group. In the elimination round, the two groups of martial artists will fight 64 battles against the martial artists in their group, with each group winning one battle. Each group will win one match and have no points for a loss or a draw. After 64 matches, the top 1,000 of the winners group will advance and the rest will be eliminated. The top 200 of the losers group will advance and the rest will be eliminated." Everyone stared at Zhou, their eyes trembling and their faces filled with nervousness. The first stage of the battle was at most a warm-up. Even if one was unlucky and met a strong opponent, they would not be eliminated. However, the second stage was different. If one's score was too low, it would mean that they would be eliminated. The 5 great academies were the holy lands of martial arts in the hearts of warriors. Everyone had risked their lives to get to where they were, all for the sake of entering the 5 great academies. If they were eliminated in the Hidden Dragon competition, it would be a real pity. Everyone, don't be too nervous. Even if you're eliminated in the elimination round, it doesn't mean that you won't be able to enter the 5 great academies. As long as your performance is good enough, you'll still have a chance," Zhou Yu said with a smile. That's right, the 5 academies had recruited a total of about 8,000 people this time. However, only a little more than 1,000 people could advance in the second stage. Therefore, there was still a small number of martial artists who had been eliminated. They could still enter the 5 academies, but the premise was that their performance was outstanding enough. Everyone's eyes were blazing, as if they were all hoping to win Zhou Yu's favor. At this moment, Nie Tian suddenly realized that the referees behind Zhou Yu were not the same referees as before. Instead, they were martial artists who looked older and stronger. It seemed like they were the teachers of the 5 great academies. Everyone, the people standing behind I right now are the teachers of the 5 great academies. They will be the judges of the elimination round. Zhou Yu's gaze swept across the crowd as he continued. Furthermore, every single one of them will have a spot in their hands. As long as your performance is good enough and you are recognized by them, they will let you enter the 5 great academies directly. That's great. Everyone's eyes were shaking as their expressions became heated. The way they looked at the referees had changed. It was now filled with respect and admiration. Interesting. The corner of Nie Tian's mouth twitched as he smiled faintly. This is just a trick that the disciples from the noble families use. However, Qi Qinfeng, who was standing next to him, forced a smile and said with dissatisfaction, "What do you mean?" Nie Tian was dazed for a second, not understanding. Qi Qinfeng's lips twitched as he said, "The spots in these people's hands seem to be fair, but in reality, most of them have already been reserved by the big clans. Some of the disciples from the noble families are not talented enough or powerful enough, but the forces behind them are powerful enough to buy the referees in advance. It's equivalent to entering the 5 great academies in advance." "So that's how it is," Nie Tian said, frowning. So there was such a trick behind the seemingly fair selection. The spots in the hands of these referees had already been bought by others. Nie Tian was still too young to see through the profound meaning behind it. But it doesn't matter. Lord Nie Tian is so powerful that he can still enter the 5 great academies even if there's something fishy going on. Qi Qinfeng looked at Nie Tian and said with a smile. Nie Tian smiled and did not say anything else. In fact, Qi Qinfeng's strength was considered the strongest among all the participants. However, he might not be able to enter the 5 great academies because he was from a low-level sacred world. Not to mention other warriors, even his own clan members looked down on him. Then, Zhou Yu announced the start of the elimination round. Nie Tian was still number 208. All he needed to do now was to wait for the battles to begin. After the battles began, the 500 arenas in the sky were quickly filled with warriors. Exciting battles were staged one after another. Nie Tian's eyes were like lightning. He quickly filtered out the useless battles and focused on the quality battles. A moment later, his eyes were attracted by a sword user. This sword user stood coldly in the sky. He wore a white robe and his body was like a sword. Sword energy surged around him, giving off a cold and sharp aura. This person's sword chi is giving me a very familiar feeling. Nie Tian frowned and couldn't help but look at that person with a strange look in his eyes. It was very strange. This person's sword energy gave him a familiar feeling, but he was very sure that he had never seen this person before. "Look, that guy is the sword genius of the Heaven Martial Group, Yu Jingchen." At this time, someone shouted from the side. "Heaven Martial Group." Nie Tian was stunned for a moment. His eyes couldn't help but become hot with astonishment. Of course, he was familiar with the Heaven Martial Group. It was one of the 5 forces behind the heart of the sky. Its leader was the 8th Star Messenger, the Divine Heaven Ancestor, Scarlet Life Loyal Heart. He really didn't expect to meet a sword user from the Heaven Martial Group here. In the next moment, Nie Tian suddenly realized something. His eyes became hot and he shouted in surprise, "I know!" Chapter 40-48. Nie Tian had comprehended the sacred heaven-defying sword from the sacred heaven ancestors' tri-talent sacred formation. Yu Jingchen's sword energy was similar to Nie Tian's sacred heaven-defying sword. Yu Jingchen was a member of the Heaven Martial Group, so he must have cultivated in the tri-talent sacred formation before. His sword energy was also related to the formation. It seemed that Yu Jingchen's relationship with the sacred heaven ancestor was not ordinary. He should be a disciple or a grand disciple. Who is this person? His sword energy is so strong. At this time, someone who didn't know Yu Jingchen frowned. You don't even know him? He is the sword prodigy Yu Jingchen, who became famous on the Hidden Sky list in recent years. A swordsman looked at Yu Jingchen with passionate eyes and did not hide his admiration for the latter. He excitedly said, Yu Jingchen was not originally on the Hidden Sky list, but 3 years ago, he suddenly rose to the top. In just 3 years, he directly squeezed into the top 10 of the Hidden Sky list and is currently ranked 9th. Hearing that person's words, Nie Tian couldn't help but be shocked. Yu Jingchen didn't look old, and his strength was only at the 5th level of Heavenly Righteous. Yet, he was ranked 9th on the Hidden Sky list and was even above the Sacred Light Martial Intent. This was truly unbelievable. Is he that strong? Someone expressed his doubts and said, looking at him, he doesn't seem like much. What do you know? Another person was unhappy and growled. Although Yu Jingchen's martial cultivation is not high, his sword cultivation is extremely high. Even the sacred heaven ancestor said that he is the #1 sword prodigy of the Heaven Martial Group in the last 1 million years. Nie Tian's eyes trembled. He couldn't help but become excited, and his heart was filled with anticipation. He really wanted to see how strong this person, who was called the #1 sword prodigy by the Scarlet Life Sacred Heart Reverend, was. Kill. At this moment, the cultivator opposite Yu Jingchen let out a low roar. His figure moved like a wild beast, pressing down on Yu Jingchen. However, Yu Jingchen stood in the same place without moving at all. It was as if the opponent didn't exist. In the blink of an eye, that person was only a few dozen meters away from Yu Jingchen. Right at that moment, Yu Jingchen's figure suddenly moved and he took a step forward. Instantly, a sharp sword chi shot out and streaked across the void. After that, a shrill cry sounded out, and then that person was directly sent flying. He retreated for thousands of meters, and his body was drenched in blood. That seemingly unremarkable sword chi actually chopped off that person's arm. When the crowd saw this, they could not help but gasp, and their eyes became dull. No one had expected that Yu Jingchen would be able to severely injure a martial artist of the same level with just his sword chi. What a terrifying sword chi! Nie Tian's heart skipped a beat when he saw this, and his eyes were filled with shock. Just now, he had not been able to sense Yu Jingchen's true realm, but he reckoned that Yu Jingchen was at least a sword tribulation swordsman, and he might even be a sword tribulation 9-stage sword tribulation swordsman. It was no wonder that his sword chi was so terrifying. It was really shocking. Nie Tian couldn't help but look at Yu Jingchen with a fervent gaze. He was actually a little excited. He began to look forward to fighting with Yu Jingchen. I've lost. At that moment, that defeated martial artist sighed helplessly. With Yu Jingchen's strength, it was already very kind of him to have only taken one of his arms. If it had been any other violent martial artist, he would have long been a corpse. Yu Jingchen's decision to injure his opponent but not kill him was considered wise. He wanted to tell his opponents not to provoke him easily. After all, for experts like them, the second stage of the elimination round was nothing. The real challenge was in the third and fourth stages. No one wanted to reveal too much of their strength in the second stage, so even if they did not kill him, they still wanted to give their opponents some warning, lest some people overestimate their strength and fight even though they knew they could not win. High up in the sky, Yu Jingchen took a step forward and left the arena. However, His eyes were focused on a silver-haired martial artist. It was Nie Tian. Nie Tian's eyes also trembled, as he felt Yu Jingchen's gaze. Yu Jingchen seemed to have discovered something about Nie Tian, and he wanted to say something, but in the end, he did not say anything. Next, Nie Tian continued to watch other battles. After a while, he welcomed his first battle. His opponent was a Tianyi Stage 5 martial artist, and he defeated him in one move. Before he met a true expert, Nie Tian did not want to reveal his strength. He wanted to end the battle quickly. The second stage of the battles progressed quickly, and after 5 days, most of the martial artists had already fought more than 20 battles. Nie Tian had fought a total of 23 battles, and he had won all of them, earning him 23 points. He could not see his own ranking, but he estimated that he should be in the top 1,000. It was basically a matter of time before he entered the third stage. Arena 177, Hidden Dragon number 218 versus Hidden Dragon number 2045. At this moment, a deep voice rang out, causing Nie Tian's eyes to heat up. He was number 218, and he was about to welcome another victory. In the next instant, Nie Tian's body moved, and he stepped onto Arena 177. Almost at the same time, a sharp figure appeared, standing in the air like a sharp sword, and his aura was incomparably sharp. Huh! When Nie Tian saw the figure in front of him, he could not help but exclaim in surprise. He did not expect to meet the opponent he had been looking forward to so soon, Yu Jingchen. It's you! Yu Jingchen saw Nie Tian, and he was also stunned for a moment, and his face was full of surprise. It seems that you are also paying attention to me, Nie Tian said with a smile, and he said, is it because of my identity? The 5 forces behind the Heart of the Sky were all coveting the Heart of the Sky. When Nie Tian was in the Qiankuan sect, many swordsmen did not approve of him, and some even wanted to kill him. Although Yu Jingchen was known as the top sword genius by the Crimson Life Loyal Heart, it was difficult to guarantee that he did not covet the Heart of the Sky. Since you have already obtained the Heart of the Sky, this is your opportunity, and I will not take it from you, Yu Jingchen said with a serious face. Yu Jingchen's expression was solemn as he said, however, I will not show mercy to you just because you are the leader of the Supreme Sky Sect. I will not admit defeat either. Of course, I look forward to a fair fight with you. Nie Tian smiled faintly, and Yu Jingchen's straightforwardness made him feel a little ashamed. Your current peak combat strength should not be in the sword principle, but the martial principle, right? Yu Jingchen's eyes narrowed slightly, and he asked. So what? Nie Tian smiled faintly, and he asked. I have seen your previous battles, and it is not wise for us to fight now. Why don't we change the way we fight? Yu Jingchen's face was cold, and he said in a deep voice. How do we fight? Nie Tian's face was calm, and he was looking forward to it. We will fight in the formation. Yu Jingchen stretched out his hand, and a scroll rose into the air. Then, an endless amount of formation power gushed out, and a sword formation was formed. Chapter 40-49. Seeing Yu Jingchen release the Tri-Talent Sacred Array, Nie Tian's eyes lit up and he couldn't hide the excitement in his heart. His sacred heaven-defying sword was comprehended from the Tri-Talent Sacred Array. Although he had simulated the Tri-Talent Sacred Array with his divine sense, he didn't have the same feeling as before. Old ancestor Xingtian had said that the Tri-Talent Sacred Array was a natural array formed by the heaven and earth. The Tri-Talent Sacred Array that Yu Jingchen released from the scroll was obviously not the original Tri-Talent Sacred Array. However, the aura of the array was even purer and stronger than the Tri-Talent Sacred Array that Nie Tian came from. Yu Jingchen, do you want to fight me in the Tri-Talent Sacred Array? Nie Tian became cold and asked Yu Jingchen. It was obvious that Yu Jingchen was very familiar with the Tri-Talent Sacred Array. If he and Nie Tian were to fight in the array, Nie Tian might not be able to gain an advantage. Don't worry, we will only compete with talent in the array and nothing else. Yu Jingchen could tell what Nie Tian was thinking and said proudly, "Your sword Dao realm is too much lower than mine. If we fight directly, it will be too unfair to you." Yu Jingchen, never take advantage of others. I just want to see what kind of talent you, the master of the sky, has to be able to obtain the recognition of the heart of the sky. Nie Tian's eyes slightly narrowed and the corners of his mouth twitched. He asked, "Then how do you want to compete with talent?" Although Yu Jingchen said that he didn't care that Nie Tian had fused with the heart of the sky, he definitely did care. After all, he was a member of the Heaven Martial Association and knew how powerful the heart of the sky was. It would be a lie to say that he wasn't jealous that an outsider had obtained the heart of the sky. It's very simple. Yu Jingchen nodded and said, "I saw that the aura of your sword technique was similar to the Tri-Talent Sacred Array. You must have comprehended it in the Tri-Talent Sacred Array, right?" Nie Tian nodded and did not deny it. It seemed that Yu Jingchen was indeed paying close attention to him. Yu Jingchen narrowed his eyes and a strange expression flashed across his face. "My sword technique is also comprehended from the 3 talents sacred array. It's called the 9 startling swords. You and I will stay in the trifecta sacred formation. We won't use our own strength, but only our sword moves. We will use the power of the formation to fight and see whose sword moves are more powerful." Powerful? Interesting. I accept this method. Nie Tian understood immediately. He smiled faintly and agreed. Yu Jingchen's suggestion was very simple. Both sides would not use their own strength. Instead, they would use the power of the array to fight. In this way, it was a competition of the strength of the sword moves. Both of their sword moves were comprehended from the trifecta sacred formation. The strength of their sword moves represented their comprehension and talent in the sword Dao. Yu Jingchen's intention was obvious. He wanted to tell Nie Tian that even if he obtained the heart of the sky, his talent in the sword Dao was still stronger than the Lord of the Sky. Although this method of fighting was fair in name, it was still advantageous for Yu Jingchen. After all, he had stayed in the trifecta sacred formation for a longer period of time and had a deeper understanding of the power of the formation. However, this method of fighting was already not bad. If the two of them fought to the death, it would be even more disadvantageous for Nie Tian. After all, his swordsmanship was far inferior to Yu Jingchen's. The two of them did not start fighting for a long time, which caused the surrounding crowd to be dissatisfied. What are these two guys doing? Aren't they just wasting time? There are still so many battles to be fought. Do they want us to just sit here and watch them talk nonsense? How troublesome. If you want to fight, then fight. If you don't want to fight, then get off the stage. Although Yu Jingchen was very famous, the crowd's expressions changed when they saw that the two of them had not made a move for a long time. However, the judge looked very calm. His gaze shifted between Nie Tian and Yu Jingchen, and it was obvious that he was very interested in the two of them. The judge was also a swordsman, and he had already reached the inverse sword realm. He wanted to see how strong the talent of the two young swordsmen was. He was especially looking forward to seeing Yu Jingchen, who was known as the #1 swordsman of the Heaven Martial Association. "Let's begin," Yu Jingchen said with a sharp gaze. He was excited to see an opponent worthy of being defeated. "All right." Nie Tian agreed, and the sky sword appeared in his hand. However, there was no sword chi surging on the blade, only the sharpness of the blade. Sacred heaven-defying sword, human sword slashes the stars. The next moment, the sky sword streaked across the void, and the momentum of the sword drew on the power of the formation. It set off waves of sword chi in the air, which pressed down on Yu Jingchen. Jing Chen's first move, first element shocking wind. At the same time, Yu Jingchen's figure also moved. The unfettered sword in his hand caused the surrounding space to tremble. In an instant, a powerful force surged out like a raging wave. Nie Tian's eyes narrowed slightly, and he was actually forced back several meters by the majestic force. Is the sword technique that you have comprehended only at this level? Yu Jingchen smiled coldly, and his face was full of disdain. However, he was a little surprised, and he was even very shocked. Although Nie Tian had only used one move, he had already noticed something strange. Although Nie Tian's sword technique had drawn on the power of the formation, the rise and fall of the sword clearly showed signs of going against the formation. If not for the fact that Nie Tian's sword technique was connected to the Trinity Holy Formation, Yu Jingchen would have suspected that Nie Tian's sword technique had really been comprehended from the Trinity Holy Formation. This is just the beginning. Nie Tian steadied himself and smiled calmly. I admire your confidence, but in front of me, your confidence will be completely destroyed. Yu Jingchen's face was cold, and the unfettered sword slashed through the void again. Suddenly, a majestic force condensed, and it was the second move of Jing Chen's 9 swords, Yin and Yang startling clouds. Nie Tian's eyes narrowed slightly, and he was extremely shocked. Yu Jingchen was indeed a peerless sword genius, and he had actually integrated the Yin and Yang realms into his sword technique, which greatly increased the power of his sword technique. With the help of the formation, the sword technique was instantly launched, and the wind and clouds moved at the same time. Moon swallowing earth sword. In the next moment, the sword in the sky sank slightly, and the sound of the sword rang out. The sword technique of the formation was connected, and the momentum was natural. Bang! Then, the two forces collided, and a muffled sound was heard in the void. Nie Tian's figure was forced back again. On the other side, Yu Jingchen did not move at all, and he was as calm as a mountain. Without a doubt, Yu Jingchen was still the winner of the second move. Jing Chen's third move, 3 talents shock. Then, Yu Jingchen did not give Nie Tian any chance to breathe, and the unfettered sword pierced out like a spiritual snake, suppressing everything. Sky sword reversing sun. Nie Tian's eyes trembled, and he also attacked, and the power in the sky shook the void. Bang! In the next moment, the two forces collided, and the void trembled, and Nie Tian's figure was forced back again. Chapter 40-50. Nie Tian could feel the pressure coming from the sword, and his eyes trembled slightly. He could feel that the sword in the sky was trembling as if it was frightened, and the sound of the sword humming was extremely chaotic. He moved to the side and stabbed his sword forward, using the momentum of the sword to retreat a few meters. Swoosh! A sword blade whistled through the air and brushed past his chest. This fellow's sword technique is indeed terrifying. Nie Tian steadied himself, and he was shocked. Yu Jingchen did not use his sword intent. He only used his sword technique to activate the power of the array, and yet he was able to release a sharp force that was as sharp as a sword blade. Jing Chen's fifth technique, 5 elements overturning the sea. Then, Yu Jingchen attacked again, and this time, his sword actually activated the power of the array. The rolling force was vast and powerful, and it was like thousands of waves crashing down on Nie Tian. Nie Tian felt the violent pressure, and his eyes darkened. The sword in the sky was like a raging dragon, and he used the oneness of heaven and man technique to resist Yu Jingchen. Bang! The next moment, after a muffled sound, Nie Tian was forced to retreat again, and blood flowed out from the corner of his mouth. In fact, an attack of this level would not be able to hurt his martial body at all. However, he had an agreement with Yu Jingchen that if he did not use any other power, his primordial meridians would naturally not be able to operate. Under the premise of forcefully suppressing his own power, Nie Tian's martial body was inevitably not used to it. The blood in his body was boiling, and he vomited blood. The two of them were fighting fiercely, but the crowd around them was very dissatisfied. Are these two guys messing around? If they continue to fight like this, when will it end? What are they doing? They obviously have the strength, but they are still fighting like this. Are they treating us like fools? Take your time and watch. They are a genius on the hidden dragon list. Most of the people present were not swordsmen, and even if they were swordsmen, Only a few of them could understand the battle between Ye Tian and Yu Jingchen. On the other hand, the judge was watching with great interest, and his eyes shone with a fiery light, as if he had found a treasure. He was a god-defying swordsman, so of course he could tell how terrifying Ye Tian and Yu Jingchen were. Using sword moves to trigger the power of the formation to battle, this kind of battle method was very novel. However, Ye Tian and Yu Jingchen's performance had truly broadened his horizons. It would not be an exaggeration to say that even if he were to personally attack, it would be extremely difficult for him to defeat both Ye Tian and Yu Jingchen in the tri-element sacred formation. Furthermore, Ye Tian and Yu Jingchen were so young, yet they had such a deep understanding of the sword Tao. It was truly rare. At this moment, the judge's gaze towards Ye Tian had changed. It was burning hot. Although he favored Yu Jingchen more, Yu Jingchen was a member of the Heaven Martial Association, and he wouldn't care about him at all. However, Ye Tian was different. Even though Ye Tian was slightly weaker than Yu Jingchen, he was still very powerful. It would be a good idea to recruit him as a disciple. Seeing this, the judge's eyes lit up with excitement. With his status, if he were to take Ye Tian as a disciple, Ye Tian would be very happy. You're not bad, but this battle is over. At this moment, Yu Jingchen's eyes trembled slightly. The unfettered sword flew into the air, and suddenly, all the power of the formation in the surroundings was absorbed into the sword momentum. A terrifying force appeared, like a raging dragon, roaring in all directions. Ye Tian's eyes trembled slightly, and his face darkened. Yu Jingchen's sword moves were stronger than the previous one, and each move was connected to each other. Every move was enhanced, and when he reached the sixth move, the 6 harmonies heaven and earth, he was actually able to release such a terrifying force. Heaven and earth unite, yin and yang combine. However, Ye Tian didn't show any signs of weakness. Instead, he faced it head-on. The sword in the sky was like a dragon, and there was a hint of lightness amidst its forcefulness. The sound of a sword rang out in the void, and a weak sword shadow appeared, pouncing out like a wild beast. Bang! In the void, there was a loud bang, and a terrifying wave of air swept out in all directions, as if it wanted to engulf the entire world. Ye Tian's figure retreated rapidly, and after he stabilized himself, he spat out a mouthful of blood. On the other hand, Yu Jingchen didn't move an inch, but his body swayed a little, and his face turned slightly ugly. He didn't expect that even after using the 6th move, he still couldn't completely defeat Ye Tian. Again. At this moment, Ye Tian took a step forward with a smile on his face, and it was obvious that he was provoking Yu Jingchen. Arrogant! Yu Jingchen's face darkened, and he roared in a low voice. The 7th move, the 7 killing blood, broke out of the formation, and the void was suddenly filled with killing intent. Ye Tian's eyes trembled slightly, and his figure retreated rapidly. The sword in the sky danced slightly in the air, and he used the formation to form a shield. Bang! However, the shield couldn't withstand Yu Jingchen's 7 killing blood, and it shattered immediately. Ye Tian's figure retreated again, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. His face was as pale as a sheet of paper. If you don't use any other power, how long can you last after taking my sword? Yu Jingchen sneered, and he looked extremely arrogant. He had to admit that Ye Tian was far stronger than he had expected, and he was actually able to fight until the 7th move without being defeated. The winner hasn't been decided yet, and it's still uncertain who will have the last laugh. Ye Tian wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth, and he smiled faintly. His eyes were filled with cunning. Could it be that he still has a move he hasn't used? Yu Jingchen's eyes trembled, and his heart was filled with shock. Ye Tian's calmness made him a little flustered. Come, let's continue. Then, Ye Tian smiled faintly, and he used the sword in front of his chest to block Yu Jingchen's attack. Your arrogance is worthy of me using the 8th move. Yu Jingchen furrowed his brows, and he swept across the sky in a carefree manner. The 8 Desolate's chaotic force rushed out, and the void trembled as if it was about to be torn apart. However, Nye Tian stood in the same place, and he didn't move an inch. Bang! In the next instant, a muffled sound rang out, and Nye Tian's figure retreated dozens of meters. While he was still in the air, he spat out a mouthful of blood. However, the moment he landed on the ground, he stood firmly. Although his expression was ugly, his eyes were incomparably sharp. Huh! Yu Jingchen looked at Nye Tian with a frown, and he exclaimed in surprise. Nye Tian didn't resist at all, and he took the 8 Desolate's chaotic force head-on. Moreover, he was still standing in the same place. It was truly terrifying. Do you admit defeat? Yu Jingchen's face sank and he spoke in a cold tone. I want to see how strong your 9th move is. The corner of Nye Tian's mouth twitched, and he smiled indifferently. You're courting death. Yu Jingchen's eyes darkened and he growled. Nye Tian was already injured, and if he took the 9th move, he would most likely be severely injured. This would undoubtedly have a huge impact on his next battle. Make your move, Nye Tian said calmly, and his eyes were filled with determination. Since you insist on doing this, I'll fulfill your wish. Yu Jingchen's expression changed, and he raised his unfettered sword high in the air. Suddenly, a majestic aura surged, and the 9th move of the Chen shocking 9 swords, 9 extremes 1,000 mountains was about to be unleashed. At the same time, Nye Tian's figure moved, and the sky sword slashed across the sky. The sword merged with the array, and the aura of the array was actually affected. 9 extremes 1,000 mountains. Chapter 40-51. On the stage, Yu Jingchen used the 9th move of the 9 sword techniques, 9 extremes 1,000 mountains, and Nye Tian's sacred heaven-defying sword at the same time. Boom! Boom! The sword techniques triggered the power of the formation, and at the same time, 2 low rumbling sounds could be heard. It was as though there were wild beasts pouncing out of the void, and 2 terrifying forces rushed out violently. These 2 brats are so terrifying. When the judge saw this, his eyes couldn't help but tremble. His heart was filled with shock, and the shock was written all over his face. He did not expect Yu Jingchen and Nye Tian to have such a deep understanding of the sword principle at such a young age. Even he might not be able to master this level of sword technique. Bang! Then, the 2 forces collided, and the void shook, and the entire formation shook. The judge's expression changed, and he was even more shocked. At this moment, he felt that his sword will had a reaction, and there seemed to be signs of a breakthrough in the sword principle. Nye Tian and Yu Jingchen were both young swordsmen, and even though Yu Jingchen's sword realm had reached the sword heavenly tribulation, he was still a far cry from the judge. The fight between the 2 young swordsmen had actually helped him comprehend the sword principle, and there were signs of a breakthrough. Was this really not a dream? While the referee was still in a state of shock, something strange happened. Boom! Suddenly, a strange sound came from the formation, and then the formation seemed to have been forcefully reversed. The 2 forces actually merged into one, and they merged into an even more terrifying force that pressed down on Yu Jingchen. The sudden change caught Yu Jingchen off guard. His eyes trembled as he cried out in shock, "How could this be?" In an instant, Yu Jingchen felt an intense killing intent rushing towards him, causing his heart to tremble. This was clearly the aura of death. However, the next moment, the pressure from the sword force suddenly weakened, and there was not much power left in it. Bang! Even so, Yu Jingchen was still pushed back a few meters, and he only managed to stabilize himself. He looked very embarrassed. Damn it! Yu Jingchen was enraged, and with a low roar, his aura surged out like a raging wave, causing the entire array to shake. Nye Tian frowned when he felt the sword aura pressing down on him. He said calmly, "Yu Jingchen, you've lost." Yu Jingchen's eyes trembled, and his face was filled with shock. He was at a loss for words. Just now, in a fit of rage, he had directly released his own sword will, violating the previous agreement, and had indeed lost. Furthermore, if Nie Tian hadn't withdrawn his attack in time, he would have been severely injured. In this competition, he had indeed lost. Why didn't you kill me? Yu Jingchen's face was filled with regret. After a while, he raised his head and asked Nie Tian, "You and I are not mortal enemies. Why would I want to kill you?" Nie Tian smiled faintly, his face calm. Yu Jingchen was stunned, and Nie Tian's answer surprised him. Between cultivators, especially genius cultivators, there was a deep fear of each other. When many people fought, as long as there was a chance to kill their opponent, they would do it by hook or by crook. This was the first time Yu Jingchen had met someone like Nie Tian, who was so open about victory and defeat. After a long time, Yu Jingchen's eyes darkened, and he sighed, "I've lost this battle. Yu Jingchen, your sword technique is not weaker than mine. I was just lucky." Nie Tian smiled faintly, and his face was filled with sincerity. "No." Yu Jingchen smiled bitterly and said, "Your sword principle and combat talent are indeed stronger than mine. In this battle, I was destined to lose from the very first move." The judge was stunned, and he did not understand Yu Jingchen's words. Nie Tian smiled faintly, and he did not speak. He did not expect Yu Jingchen to be so smart as to be able to see through this point. Yu Jingchen also smiled and said, "Your sword technique has the power to reverse the formation. From the moment you made your first move, you were secretly changing the flow of the formation's power. Every time I made a move, you borrowed my power to secretly change the formation's power. The reason why you only defended during my last few moves was because you were waiting for the formation's power to accumulate enough. When I used my last move, you finally made your move. You used your strongest move to reverse the formation's power, and you absorbed the power of my sword technique to counterattack and defeat him. Am I right?" After saying that, Yu Jingchen's eyes shone with a strange light, and he looked at Nie Tian quietly. "I guess so." Nie Tian smiled and said, "However, your strength has exceeded my expectations. If I'm not wrong, the 9th move, 9 Extremes 1000 Mountains, is not the final move of the Chen 9 Swords, right?" What Yu Jingchen had said was indeed what Nie Tian had just done. He had used the sacred heaven-defying sword to reverse the formation's power, and he had cleverly used Yu Jingchen's own power to defeat himself. If Nie Tian had only used his own power, it would have been impossible for him to defeat Yu Jingchen. After all, Yu Jingchen had cultivated in the formation for a long time, and his understanding of sword techniques and formations was above Nie Tian's. It had to be said that Yu Jingchen's strength had exceeded Nie Tian's expectations, especially the 9th move, 9 Extremes 1000 Mountains. Its majestic power was really enough to split 1,000 mountains. Fortunately, Nie Tian had been secretly accumulating power in the formation since the first move, so he could use the last move to win. However, at the same time, Nie Tian felt that 9 Extremes 1000 Mountains was not the final move of the Chen 9 Swords, and Yu Jingchen had not used it yet. "Yes." Yu Jingchen's eyes trembled, and he nodded. He indeed had a move that he had not used yet, so he regretted it now. If he had used the final move of the Chen 9 Swords, the outcome might have been different. "Nie Tian, you are the most talented swordsman I have ever seen," Yu Jingchen said. Yu Jingchen continued, "There are many people in the Heaven Martial Association who cultivate in the Trinity Sacred Formation, and many of them have comprehended powerful sword techniques from it. However, you are different. What you comprehended is the inverse 3 talents move. Your talent in the sword Tao is indeed above mine." After saying that, Yu Jingchen looked a little disappointed, but there was also a little excitement in his eyes. From today onwards, he had found an opponent that he had been waiting for. Even though he admitted that he was not as good as Nie Tian, he would not admit defeat. There was still a long way to go, and it was still uncertain who would be able to reach the peak of the sword Tao. Nie Tian smiled faintly. Yu Jingchen's sword heart was firm, and he was indeed worthy of the title of the number one sword prodigy. Yu Jingchen, I would like to borrow your Trinity sacred array. Is that all right? Nie Tian asked with a faint smile. Chapter 40-52. Nie Tian's face was calm as he sat down cross-legged and began to cultivate on the arena. When the crowd saw this, they were unhappy and started to shout. What is this kid doing? This is the arena of the hidden dragon battle, but he's actually cultivating. Isn't he looking down on all of us? This is too much. This kind of person should be banned from the competition. Isn't it just because he has some strength? How can he be so arrogant? The crowd was discussing, and it was obvious that they were very unhappy with Nie Tian. However, Nie Tian was very calm and focused on cultivating, completely ignoring the others. He knew that it was indeed inappropriate for him to do so, but the opportunity to break through was fleeting, and he could not wait any longer. When he was fighting with Yu Jingchen just now, he suddenly had a new understanding of the sword Dao, especially when the two of them activated the Tri-Talent Sacred Array's array intent. It gave him a new understanding of the sacred heaven-defying sword and the sword Dao. Our battle is not over yet, why are you so anxious? Yu Jingchen's eyes were ice as he looked around coldly and said in a deep voice. Of course, he knew what Nie Tian was doing and could not be disturbed at this moment. Who do you think you are? What right do you have to shout at us? However, Yu Jingchen's attitude provoked an even stronger resistance from the crowd. Someone shouted and several people actually released their aura, ready to make a move. All of you, shut up. At this moment, the judge stood up and looked at the crowd coldly. He said coldly, "This battle is not over yet, don't blame me for being merciless if anyone dares to cause trouble." Boom. As soon as he finished speaking, he took a step forward and a powerful sword aura spread out in all directions. The crowd could not bear the impact and they all retreated. The crowd was stunned and could not react for a long time. They did not understand why the judge was suddenly so angry. Yu Jingchen's eyes swept over the judge and the corner of his mouth twitched. How could he not see that the judge was trying to rope in Nie Tian? It was not strange for a talented martial artist like Nie Tian to be tempted by the referee. However, Yu Jingchen understood that with Nie Tian's temperament, this judge's plan would fail. At this moment, streams of pure sword intent began to surge out from Nie Tian's body, and his aura continued to grow stronger. Huh! Yu Jingchen's eyes widened when he saw this scene, and he exclaimed in surprise. How could he have imagined that Nie Tian's sword Dao realm would actually break through so quickly? What was even more strange was that the aura on Nie Tian's body was still increasing. In the blink of an eye, Nie Tian had broken through from the first sky of the Oracle realm to the fifth sky. But how was this possible? Yu Jingchen had never seen anyone break through so quickly in their swordsmanship. It was just too strange. Did he enter the Three Talents' secret realm? The next moment, Yu Jingchen seemed to have thought of something. His eyes trembled and his heart trembled. He had heard from the sacred heaven ancestor that there was a Three Talents secret realm within the Three Talents sacred formation, which contained a powerful sword intent. Only swordsmen who were extremely talented in sword Dao and recognized by the Three Talents sacred formation would have the opportunity to enter. Although this was only a small formation created according to the Three Talents sacred formation, it was the same as the main formation. It contained the Dao of heaven and earth, and also had a gate to the Three Talents secret realm. Looking at the situation in front of Nie Tian, there was only one explanation, and that was that he had entered the Three Talents secret realm. Then, the sword aura on Nie Tian's body became stronger and stronger. In the blink of an eye, his swordsmanship had broken through to the ninth sky of the Oracle realm. How is this possible? The judge was shocked by the scene in front of him. His eyes trembled and he could not help but shout. He was a swordsman, but the scene in front of him was so shocking that it directly overturned his understanding of sword Dao. How could a swordsman break through to the sword Tao so quickly in the blink of an eye? Even those heaven and earth spiritual materials that could directly enhance sword intent could not achieve this. Could it be that Nye Tian had obtained some kind of sword Tao inheritance? But it did not seem like it. Nye Tian's sword intent was only getting stronger, but his aura did not change at all. He could not understand what was going on in front of him. This guy, what happened to this guy? At this time, the people below the stage also reacted and shouted. Although they were not swordsmen, the sword aura on Nye Tian's body kept getting stronger. This was obviously not normal. No one knew what happened to Nye Tian's body. Boom! At this time, a huge sword aura suddenly surged from Nye Tian's body, causing the surrounding void to tremble. The Holy Realm! Yu Jingchen's eyes trembled and he exclaimed. In the blink of an eye, Nye Tian had broken through from the Oracle Realm to the Holy Realm. At this time, he was very sure that Nye Tian had definitely entered the Three Talents' secret land. After Nye Tian broke through to the Holy Realm, the sword aura on his body continued to surge. It was as if there was an endless abyss of sword intent in his body, causing his realm to continue to increase. Nye Tian, I look forward to fighting with you next time. Yu Jingchen's eyes trembled with excitement. It was a good thing for him that Nye Tian had become stronger, because he wanted to see how strong Nye Tian's sword principle would be after his realm had increased. If Nye Tian only had the sword realm of the Oracle Realm, it would be impossible for him to fight him head-on. Then, the sword aura around Nye Tian's body continued to surge. The judge at the side was completely stunned. His mouth was wide open, but he could not make a sound. After a while, Nye Tian's sword Tao surged from the first level of the Holy Realm to the 9th level of the Holy Realm. Outside his body, waves of sword intent flowed like a raging torrent, trying to help him break through to a higher sword realm. Unfortunately, each time he broke through, he missed by just a little bit. Soon, the sword intent around Nye Tian's body gradually disappeared. He opened his eyes, which were as bright as stars, clear and deep. The moment he stood up, a sharp aura was released. It was so sharp that it was terrifying. Yu Jingchen's eyes trembled. At that moment, he had an illusion that the person standing in front of him was not a person, but a sharp sword. Nye Tian's lips curled into a smile. He suppressed the excitement in his heart and forced himself to remain calm. One should know that he had just risen from the first level of the Oracle Realm to the 9th level of the Holy Realm. It was almost an increase of 2 realms. He could feel that the sword intent at this moment was 10 times stronger than before. The sword intent flowed in his body, and the sharp aura made him look like he was showing off his abilities. Chapter 40-53. The Three Talents' Secret Realm. Hearing these 4 words from Nye Tian, Yu Jingchen's eyes trembled as if thunder was ringing in his ears. He could not hide the shock in his heart. Although he had already guessed that Nye Tian was very likely to have entered the heaven, earth, and man's secret realm, he was still very shocked when his guess was confirmed by Nye Tian. The Three Talents' secret realm had always been a legendary place in the mouth of the divine heaven ancestor. In the entire heaven martial group, other than the divine heaven ancestor, no other swordsman had ever entered it. Many sword prodigies from the heaven martial group had tried to enter the Three Talents' secret realm, but none of them succeeded. Some even suspected that the Three Talents' secret realm was a lie made up by the divine heaven ancestor, and that it did not exist. However, Yu Jingchen did not doubt the divine heaven ancestor's words at all because he had already faintly sensed the existence of the Three Talents' secret realm inside the sacred formation. He had the chance to enter the real Three Talents sacred formation and cultivate it inside for many years, but he still could not enter the Three Talents secret realm. Then, he studied inside the Three Talents sacred formation for dozens of years, but he still could not enter the Three Talents secret realm. Nye Tian, on the other hand, entered the 3 talents secret realm directly from the 3 talents sacred battles duplication formation and accomplished something that he could not do for dozens of years in an instant. How could he not be shocked? Yu Jingchen, I believe that you can also enter the 3 talents secret realm. Nie Tian looked at Yu Jingchen and naturally knew what the latter was thinking, so he said with a smile. However, he did not mention anything about the 3 talents secret realm at all. Yes. Yu Jingchen nodded with a strange excitement flashing in his eyes. He had to admit that Nie Tian's sword talent was indeed stronger than his, but he would not give up. On the contrary, the stronger the opponent, the more challenging it would be. Nie Tian faintly smiled. Yu Jingchen did not show any signs of disappointment, which proved that his heart of the sword was strong and that he was indeed a great sword genius. Nie Tian, I have lost to you in terms of sword techniques, and I accept it wholeheartedly. Yu Jingchen's eyes turned and he said, Now I am looking forward to fighting against you for real. Me too. Nie Tian faintly smiled with a calm expression. Your name is Nie Tian, right? At this moment, the judge descended and arrived before Nie Tian. With a smile on his face, he asked, Thank you for speaking up for me just now, my lord. Nie Tian nodded with a smile and expressed his gratitude. Just now, this judge had spoken up for him and calmed the crowd down. It was only right for him to thank him. Let me introduce myself. My name is Huang Yan, a teacher from the Heavenly Tao Martial Palace. Huang Yan smiled faintly. Sword intent surged around him, causing him to appear extremely sharp. He said, I wonder if little brother Nie Tian is interested in joining the Heavenly Tao Martial House? I, Huang Yan, can give you the slot in my hands right now. Regardless of your battle results, you will still be able to enter the Heavenly Law Martial Palace. Moreover, if little brother Nie Tian is willing, I can take you as my personal disciple and guide you on your sword Tao in the future. His voice was not loud, and there was a hint of caution in his calmness. However, when it fell into the ears of everyone present, it was like a clap of thunder from the 9th heaven, deafening. In an instant, the surroundings were in an uproar. Could it be that this fellow is going to join the Heavenly Tao Martial Palace just like that? I don't think his strength is anything special. What does this teacher see in him? To be chosen by a teacher from the Heavenly Tao Martial Palace, and to be accepted as a personal disciple, this brat must be really lucky. As the crowd discussed, the gazes they looked at Nie Tian became strange. There was shock, envy, and at the same time, a hint of fear. Although Nie Tian's performance on the battle stage was extremely spectacular, and some of the sword practitioners with high cultivation could see his strength, he did not display any powerful combat prowess. Thus, in the eyes of the majority, he was only sloppy and ordinary. However, as a teacher of the Heavenly Tao Martial Palace, Huang Yan actually took the initiative to invite Nie Tian to join the Heavenly Tao Martial Palace in front of everyone. Furthermore, he even said that he would accept Nie Tian as his personal disciple. This was simply too tempting. The Heavenly Tao Martial Palace was the strongest out of the 5 academies, and they had always been regarded as the head of the 5 academies. Since Huang Yan was sent to host the Hidden Dragon tournament, it meant that his position in the Heavenly Tao Martial Palace was not low. For Nie Tian to be able to become a disciple of such an expert, it truly caused others to be envious. However, at this moment, Nie Tian frowned slightly, but he did not directly say anything. Little brother Nie Tian, what do you think of my suggestion? Seeing that Nie Tian did not speak, Huang Yan could not help but speak again. He was actually a little nervous, as though he was afraid that Nie Tian would reject him. This teacher, I'm really sorry, but I already have an academy that I like. Nie Tian's eyes flickered slightly. He bowed and said, Teacher Huang's kind intentions, this junior can only appreciate it. I'm really sorry. His voice was not loud, but every word he said caused Huang Yan's expression to turn uglier. By the time he finished speaking, Huang Yan's expression was already extremely ugly. His teeth were tightly clenched, and the veins on his forehead were clearly visible. It was obvious that he was suppressing his immense anger. When the crowd below heard Nie Tian's words, they were all stunned. Their eyes widened as they stared at Nie Tian, as though they suspected that they had heard wrongly. Who would have thought that Nie Tian would actually directly reject Huang Yan? Did I hear wrongly? What did this brat say? He rejected the heavenly Tao Martial Palace's invitation. This fellow is either a lunatic or a fool. The 5 academies were the sacred grounds of martial arts for countless cultivators, and the heavenly Tao Martial Palace was the head of the 5 academies. It was the sacred ground of all sacred grounds. Yet, Nie Tian actually rejected the heavenly Tao Martial Palace. This was truly out of everyone's expectations. Yu Jingchen, on the other hand, had a calm expression on his face. Just a moment ago, he was still worried that Nie Tian would agree to Huang Yan's invitation. But now, it seemed like his worries were unfounded. For a cultivator like Nie Tian, what he pursued was the pinnacle of martial arts. A mere teacher from the heavenly Tao Martial Palace naturally wouldn't be placed in his eyes. "Young man, do you know what you are saying?" At this time, Huang Yan, who had been suppressed for a long time, opened his mouth once again. His face was so gloomy that it seemed as though water could drip out of it. "This teacher, this junior is very clear about what I am saying. Thank you for your kind intentions." Nie Tian smiled faintly, his expression calm. This Huang Yan had helped him earlier, and he didn't want to make things difficult for him. Thus, he tried his best to be as humble as possible. However, it seemed like Huang Yan didn't notice his humility, and he only heard his rejection. "Young man, I will give you one more chance to speak. Please think carefully before you speak." Huang Yan's eyes trembled, and a hint of killing intent flashed through them. Everyone's expression changed, and they couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. Anyone could tell that Huang Yan was directly threatening Nie Tian. Nie Tian couldn't help but frown when he sensed Huang Yan's killing intent. However, he didn't panic and directly said, "I, Nie Tian, will not accept threats from anyone." Chapter 40-54. Hiss! The shocking scene on the martial arts arena made everyone suck in a breath of cold air. Their hearts were in their throat. Huang Yan was enraged and released a powerful sword aura. This was something no one had expected. Could it be that he was going to kill Nie Tian in front of so many people? Nie Tian's rejection of Huang Yan was indeed a loss of face for Huang Yan, and even for the Heavenly Law Martial House. However, as a teacher and a referee, it was inappropriate for him to openly attack a participant in the competition. Boom! In the blink of an eye, the enormous sword force descended, and it was as heavy as a mountain, causing Nie Tian's body to sink. The ground beneath his feet actually sank by 30 centimeters, and the entire arena shook. If the arena wasn't reinforced by the array, it would have shattered. However, Nie Tian stood firm, his back straight, and his determination was unyielding. Huang Yan's sword Dao was indeed very strong. Just the sword aura alone was enough to make Nie Tian feel unbearable. Fortunately, his martial body was strong and his sword Dao had improved tremendously. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to stand. "Little brat, there's no reason for you to stand in front of me." Seeing that Nie Tian didn't fall, Huang Yan's face darkened. Suddenly, the sword aura became even more terrifying. A powerful force landed on Nie Tian's body. Nie Tian's body trembled slightly. It felt like all the bones in his body were about to shatter. However, he still stood straight with his back as straight as a mountain. When the crowd saw this scene, they couldn't help but exclaim. Their expressions changed. Who would have thought that Huang Yan, a teacher of the Heavenly Law Martial House, would be so shameless as to attack Nie Tian directly? No matter what, his status wasn't on the same level as Nie Tian. His brazen attack was undoubtedly tarnishing the reputation of the Heavenly Law Martial House. Yu Jingchen's eyes trembled. His face was tense, but there was nothing he could do. Even a genius like him wasn't a match for an expert like Huang Yan. Little brat, if you kneel before me today, I might spare your life. Huang Yan did not expect Nie Tian to be so stubborn. With a gloomy and cold face, he said, "If you don't kneel, I'll kill you right now. Kneel before your ancestors." Nie Tian's face was as ferocious as a wild beast. Flames seemed to be burning in his eyes as he roared. Suddenly, the soul of the sky in his body was released. A sword energy soared into the sky like an angry flood dragon. Bang! In the next instant, there was a loud bang in the air as the sword force was forcibly broken apart. Huang Yan's body trembled as he was forced to take a few steps back. He cut a sorry figure. His eyes trembled and his face turned ugly. Never in his wildest dreams would he have thought that Nie Tian would actually break through his sword momentum. Nie Tian was only a newly ascended 9th-layer swordsman, yet he was able to break through the swordsmanship of a swordsman like him. How was this possible? Was Nie Tian's swordsmanship that strong? This brat must be killed. In an instant, a thought appeared in Huang Yan's mind, and he became resolute. He had a premonition that if Nie Tian didn't die, he would definitely become an existence that would shock the entire sacred world. If he didn't kill him now, he might not have another chance in the future. Although killing Nie Tian now would more or less affect the reputation of the Heavenly Law Martial House, it would be worth it if he could get rid of a potential threat. Little brat, you asked for it. Once he made up his mind, Huang Yan roared. Immediately, the sword force around his body erupted like a tsunami. The entire martial stage shook violently as if it was about to collapse. Danger! Yu Jingchen's eyes trembled as his expression changed. He shouted in horror. He never thought that Huang Yan would be so shameless as to kill Nie Tian in front of everyone. Nie Tian's eyes darkened as several astral souls in his body activated. Even if he was facing someone who was much stronger than him, he wasn't afraid at all. Even if he knew that he was like a mantis trying to stop a chariot, he would still fight to the death. Boom! In the next instant, Huang Yan made his move. A terrifying sword shadow appeared, and its sharp aura pierced through the sky as if it could tear everything apart. At this moment, Nie Tian understood that no matter how many forbidden astral souls he released, he wouldn't be able to block Huang Yan's all-out attack. At the moment of life and death, a change occurred. Hua! A sword ray appeared in the void, and it was like a ray of light that cut through the darkness. It easily shattered the killing sword shadow. Huang Yan immediately sensed a figure, and he couldn't help but take a few steps back before stabilizing himself. Who are you? He suddenly raised his head and stared at the person who attacked him coldly. It's him. Nie Tian's eyes trembled as he looked at the figure in the void. His heart immediately calmed down. The person who appeared at this moment was none other than the White Tiger Star Sovereign, who had disappeared for a long time. Nie Tian didn't expect the White Tiger Star Sovereign to appear at this moment. Humph! The White Tiger Star Sovereign raised his eyebrows and laughed. Are all the people from the Heavenly Law Martial House as shameless as you? You dare to interfere in the matters of the Heavenly Law Martial House. Huang Yan's face sank as he roared. I don't care who you are. As long as it's not fair, I dare to interfere. The White Tiger Star Sovereign laughed with a cold expression. He didn't put Huang Yan in his eyes at all. Nie Tian looked at the White Tiger Star Sovereign and couldn't help but frown. He felt a little strange. It seemed that the White Tiger Star Sovereign had two different personalities. One was calm and cold, while the other was carefree. Do you mean that you don't put the Heavenly Law Martial House in your eyes? Huang Yan's face darkened as he spoke coldly. I didn't say that. You made it up yourself. Don't blame me. The White Tiger Star Sovereign twitched his mouth and said, however, I did say that the people from the Heavenly Law Martial House are shameless. You! Huang Yan's mouth twitched. He was so angry that he almost vomited blood. However, he didn't make a move. The sword gleam made him realize that he wasn't a match for the person in front of him. What about me? The White Tiger Star Sovereign sneered with a provocative look. When the surrounding crowd saw this, they were shocked. They were all guessing who the White Tiger Star Sovereign was. He didn't put the Heavenly Law Martial House in his eyes at all. At this moment, the White Tiger Star Sovereign looked at Nie Tian and Yu Jingchen and shouted with a smile, "The two of you, why aren't you coming down? Why are you occupying the arena?" Nie Tian and Yu Jingchen immediately understood and prepared to leave the arena. Let's see who dares to move. However, at this moment, Huang Yan let out a low roar and released a powerful aura to threaten Nie Tian and Yu Jingchen. If you don't want to die, stand there obediently and don't move. At the same time, the White Tiger Star Sovereign spoke coldly. His body was covered with a layer of frost. Suddenly, a sharp white blade appeared in the void and hung above Huang Yan's head. Chapter 40-55. When the crowd saw the scene on the stage, their expressions changed. If the White Tiger Star Lord really killed Huang Yan in front of so many people, there would be a great show to watch. No matter how shameless and arrogant Huang Yan was, he was still a teacher of the Heavenly Law Martial House and the referee of the Hidden Dragon Battle. It was not an exaggeration to say that he represented not only the Heavenly Law Martial House but also the 5 academies. If the White Tiger Star Lord killed him, it would be no different from provoking the Heavenly Law Martial House and the 5 academies. Even a faction like the Heavenly Law Sacred Pavilion would not dare to challenge the 5 academies. The crowd's eyes trembled, and their hearts leaped to their throats. They were clearly anticipating something. Many people wanted to see that sharp blade fall from the sky. Then, they would be able to see a true battle between experts. Huang Yan sensed the horrifying killing intent from the White Tiger Star Lord. His eyes trembled as he growled, "Madman, do you dare to kill me here?" He knew that he was not the White Tiger Star Lord's match, but he still did not believe that the other party would dare to kill him here. "You can try." The White Tiger Star Lord smiled coldly. The coldness in his eyes made people's hearts palpitate. Compared to his previous frivolous attitude, it was as if he had become a different person. "I'll try." Huang Yan laughed coldly. He was not afraid, and his figure moved immediately. Unless the White Tiger Star Lord was a madman, he would not dare to kill a referee in the Hidden Dragon Battle. Boom! At the same time he took a step forward, the white blade above his head moved. Instantly, the void rumbled as if it was about to split open. In an instant, Huang Yan felt the aura of death. His eyes trembled, and it was too late for regrets. At this moment, he was sure that the White Tiger Star Lord dared to kill him. At this moment, the crowd's eyes trembled, and their nerves tightened. As long as that white blade landed, Huang Yan's fate would be certain to be death. Boom! However, at this moment, the void trembled slightly. Following that, a horrifying force descended and forcefully shattered that white blade. Following that, a gray-robed figure descended. He stood in midair like a mountain, and the crowd felt a huge pressure. "It's Lord Zhou." Everyone's eyes trembled as they cried out in alarm. The person who had just appeared was none other than the host of the Hidden Dragon Tournament, the Heavenly Law Martial House's inner house elder Zhou. Zhou exuded a cold aura as he stood in the air, exuding an imposing aura. Finally, a big one, the White Tiger Star Venerate said with a faint smile as he looked at Zhou with a playful expression. "Lord Elder, this fellow is openly disrupting the Hidden Dragon Battle. He deserves death." Huang Yan's eyes trembled with joy when he saw Zhou appear, and he shouted loudly, "Huang Yan, what's going on?" At this moment, Zhou finally spoke. His eyes swept over Huang Yan as he asked in a cold tone, "Lord Elder, these 2 swordsmen are fighting on the stage, fighting to the death. I saw that they are both talented swordsmen, so I stepped in to stop them." The corner of Huang Yan's mouth twitched. He bowed slightly and said, Who knew that this guy would suddenly interfere and want to kill me? When the crowd heard Huang Yan's words, their faces couldn't help but change. All of them were filled with disgust. This Huang Yan was, after all, a teacher of the heavenly Tao martial palace. He could be considered an expert of a region. How could his words be made up? You are really shameless to the extreme. The white tiger star venerate swept his gaze over Huang Yan and smiled coldly. Do you take this big elder for a fool, or do you take all of us for blind? Lord Elder, everything this subordinate said is the truth. There is no falsehood at all, Huang Yan said loudly as he glared at the white tiger star venerate. Zhou Yu frowned. His gaze was deep and murderous like a lion. He was no fool. From the reactions of the crowd, he could tell that Huang Yan was framing him. If this were any other place, Zhou Yu would have killed the white tiger star venerate without caring about the truth. However, it was different now. This was the venue of the hidden dragon battle. Cultivators from the all-heaven sacred world were everywhere. There was no lack of people from major factions among them. If Zhou Yu insisted on shielding Huang Yan, it would be the same as disregarding the dignity of the heavenly Tao martial palace. Although Huang Yan was also a member of the heavenly Tao martial palace, he was just a lowly teacher. His status was far inferior to an inner institute elder like him. If Zhou Yu acted shamelessly as well, the entire world would mock the heavenly Tao martial palace. Shut up! Huang Yan's gaze swept across the white tiger star venerate. Then, he looked back at Huang Yan and said coldly, "Apologize to this lord." Ah! Huang Yan was stunned. He thought he had heard wrong. Zhou Yu actually wanted him to apologize to the white tiger star venerate? Why? Hurry up! Zhou Yu's expression darkened as he roared again. Yes. Huang Yan reacted and nodded in shock. He looked at the white tiger star venerate with an unsightly expression and said softly, "I'm sorry." The white tiger star venerate's lips twitched slightly. He looked at Zhou Yu and said, "Looks like there are still reasonable people in the heavenly Tao martial palace." Whoosh! After saying that, his figure moved slightly. Immediately, a sharp blade whistled past, and a tear appeared in space. When Zhou Yu saw this, his eyes trembled and he was shocked. He had not expected the white tiger star venerate to be so powerful that he could tear space-time. With his current cultivation, he could also tear space-time, but it would not be as easy as the white tiger star venerate. Fortunately, he had not acted rashly. If he had attacked directly, he would not have been a match for the white tiger star venerate. The next moment, Zhou Yu frowned and asked, "How should I address you?" "Just call me Old Bai." The white tiger star venerate laughed and said, "If you want to seek revenge, you can look for the myriad yuan pavilions, Qing Qi. I'm in charge of causing trouble, and he's in charge of cleaning up after me." Nie Tian could not help but be stunned, and black lines appeared on his face. Was the white tiger star venerate before him really the same person as the white tiger star venerate he had met before? Zhou Yu's eyes also trembled, and then he said with a faint smile, "So, you are Grandmaster Qing Qi's friend. There's no need for formalities." The white tiger star venerate waved his hand and said, "After all, this is the stage of the hidden dragon tournament. Some people are not qualified to be judges. They can't even be fair, so how can they be teachers? In my opinion, those who are not qualified should just leave." Everyone was stunned. The white tiger star venerate's attitude was a little too arrogant. "Mr. Bai is right." Zhou Yu frowned, then he looked at Huang Yan and said, "Huang Yan, from now on, you are no longer a judge. Go and reflect on yourself." Huang Yan was stunned and he could not say anything. Chapter 40-56. The storm came to an end for now. At this moment the white tiger star lord looked at Nie Tian and said with a faint smile, "Nie Tian, you'd better perform well in the upcoming matches. Qing Qi said that if you don't perform well, he'll take back the myriad yuan sacred medallion." Of course. Nie Tian smiled and nodded in response. He naturally understood what the White Tiger Star Lord meant. He clearly wanted to use Qing Qi to protect him. So this little brother is also Grandmaster Qing Qi's friend. Zhou Yu was an astute person. His eyes flickered as he looked at Nie Tian and said, Huang Yan scared you just now. I apologize on his behalf. Nie Tian nodded. Lord Elder, you are too polite. Nie Tian smiled calmly. Everyone's expressions changed when they saw this. Their eyes almost popped out of their sockets. An inner institute elder of the Heavenly Law Martial House was actually apologizing to a small fry like the Tiani sage? Were they really seeing things? How could these people know how powerful the 10,000 yuan sacred token was? Zhou Yu had a noble status and was very knowledgeable. He naturally knew what the 10,000 yuan sacred token meant. The fact that Qing Qi could give Nie Tian the 10,000 yuan sacred token meant that Nie Tian's status was extraordinary. Although the 10,000 yuan pavilion was not very famous in the all-heaven sacred world, Zhou Yu knew that it was an extremely powerful organization. Nearly half of the major cities in the all-heaven sacred world had city-protecting formations and barriers made by the 10,000 yuan pavilion. One could see how powerful it was. Perhaps the 10,000 yuan pavilion was not a particularly powerful organization, but it was like a huge underground net. Once it was moved, many towering trees would be dragged along. That was why Zhou Yu was especially polite to Nie Tian. He could not help but feel some lingering fear. If Huang Yan had really killed Nie Tian, it would have been terrible. He would have completely offended the 10,000 yuan pavilion. Although the Heavenly Law Martial House was not afraid of the 10,000 yuan pavilion, it was clearly unwise to offend such a powerhouse over such a small matter. Nie Tian, I'm leaving. Then, the White Tiger Star Lord smiled faintly and left with a flash. Nie Tian smiled faintly and did not say anything else. After that, the Hidden Dragon contest continued. Another judge appeared, replacing Huang Yan. After Nie Tian walked down the stage, he continued to pay attention to the other battles. At this moment, a battle on an arena attracted his attention. Boom! A tall and sturdy figure stood in the sky above the arena. His entire body surged with powerful saber qi that was like a huge wave, causing him to seem mighty like a mountain. This person's saber qi is so domineering. Nie Tian's eyes trembled slightly as he exclaimed in his heart. Judging from the ferocity of this person's saber qi, he was definitely a saber heavenly tribulation level saber wielder. His name is Feng Wangshang, ranked 8th on the Hidden Sky list. At this time, Yu Jingchen walked over to Nie Tian's side and said with a faint smile. It turned out that he was also paying attention to this battle. Are you familiar with him? Nie Tian couldn't help but ask with a smile. If he remembered correctly, Yu Jingchen was ranked 9th on the Hidden Sky list. He was one rank lower than Feng Wangshang. I have fought with him 3 times, and I lost twice and drew once. Yu Jingchen smiled and nodded. Does that mean that his strength is above yours? Nie Tian's eyes narrowed as he asked jokingly. Perhaps. Yu Jingchen's lips twitched, but he did not deny it. No martial artist would easily admit that they were weaker than others, let alone a genius like Yu Jingchen. It seems he's also going to be a formidable opponent. Nie Tian laughed, his eyes blazing as he stared at the King Bestowal tomb. Kill! And at this moment, the cultivator opposite King Shang let out a low roar. His figure flashed, and he charged over madly. Bang! However, in the next moment, Feng Wangshang took a step forward and released an unstoppable force. Suddenly, a powerful blade qi whizzed out and the sound of a wolf howling could be heard in the void. Then, with a muffled sound, the martial artist was directly smashed into pieces, and not even his bones were left. The horrifying scene caused Nie Tian to frown, and his expression flickered. He did not expect Feng Wangshang to be so ruthless and decisive. From the looks of it, Feng Wangshang did not seem like a cruel and bloodthirsty person. Yu Jingchen could tell what Nie Tian was thinking, so he smiled bitterly and said, "This fellow believes that the strong can improve themselves, so he will not kill indiscriminately. However, if someone encounters him, he will definitely not show mercy." In the past, when he first fought with Feng Wangshang, he almost died at his opponent's hands. Nie Tian nodded and did not say anything else. Every martial artist had their own martial Tao. Although Nie Tian did not agree with Feng Wangshang's actions, he would not deliberately criticize him. In fact, compared to people like Xiao Wanjie who killed indiscriminately, Feng Wangshang was already considered very good. "Yu Jingchen, I look forward to fighting with you." Feng Wangshang killed his opponent in one move, then looked at Yu Jingchen and said directly. As for Nie Tian, who was beside Yu Jingchen, he was not even interested in looking at him. "Any time." Yu Jingchen smiled indifferently, his eyes blazing. For now, an opponent like Feng Wangshang was obviously more exciting than Nie Tian. Next, Nie Tian continued to watch the other battles. Soon, another 5 days passed. Nie Tian had already fought 44 battles, and his battle record was still a complete victory. His luck was not bad, as the opponents he encountered were not very strong. In fact, no one could force him to use his true strength. After 5 days, his sword Dao realm was already very stable. Moreover, he could use all kinds of sword techniques and sword intent, and even fuse other types of energy. At this time, what he needed the most was a real opponent so that he could fight to his heart's content. Only the most realistic battle could test a martial artist's true strength. "Look over there." At this time, someone suddenly exclaimed. Nie Tian frowned and looked at an arena in the distance. 2 figures appeared in the air, and his expression changed. One of the faces was very familiar to him. It was Jun Jianxing. The other face was also not unfamiliar to him. It was the bladesman ranked 8th on the Hidden Sky list, Feng Wangshang. Jun Jianxing's luck was really bad, as he actually encountered a strong martial artist like Feng Wangshang. In the next moment, Nie Tian suddenly recalled Yu Jingchen's words. His face sank and his expression turned extremely ugly. Feng Wangshang believed in the strong, and no matter what kind of opponent he faced, he would not show mercy. Although Jun Jianxing's cultivation was not high, his combat strength was not weak. However, compared to a strong martial artist like Feng Wangshang, Jun Jianxing was clearly inferior. In fact, Nie Tian even felt that Jun Jianxing might not be able to take a single strike from Feng Wangshang. Nie Tian's figure moved, and he came to the side of the arena. "Is he your friend?" Yu Jingchen's figure appeared next to Nie Tian, and he asked in a deep voice. "Yes." Nie Tian nodded, and he was obviously very worried. Yu Jingchen frowned and sighed, but he did not say anything. Chapter 40-57. What's wrong? Nie Tian noticed that something was wrong with Yu Jingchen's expression and could not help but frown. "I hope nothing bad happens," Yu Jingchen did not explain and said in a deep voice. Nie Tian's eyebrows furrowed as he had a bad premonition. On the martial arts arena, 2 figures stood in the void. One was as sharp as a sword and the other was as majestic as a mountain. "Your saber qi is so strong." Jun Jianxing could feel the pressure from the saber qi and his eyes trembled slightly. "I hate swordsmen the most in my life." King Shang's face was as cold as ice and his eyes were surging with murderous intent. Nie Tian frowned and his heart sank again. He had paid attention to King Shang's battles before. Although all of his opponents had died tragically at his hands, Nie Tian had never felt such a strong murderous intent from King Shang. However, Nie Tian had never sensed such a strong killing intent from King Shang. Furthermore, the way King Shang was looking at Jun Jianxing was as if he was looking at a mortal enemy. Jun Jianxing could not possibly know King Shang. Why would the latter look at him like that? Nie Tian frowned and was puzzled. Murderous intent. Jun Jianxing's eyes trembled and his face darkened. "Your Excellency, I don't think we know each other." Have you mistaken me for someone else? Die. King Shang's face was gloomy and he let out a low roar. His aura exploded in an instant like a mountain flood or an avalanche. The rolling momentum swept everything as if the world was about to collapse. So strong. Nie Tian's eyes trembled and he exclaimed in his heart. He did not expect King Shang to be so strong. Even he might not be able to withstand such a terrifying saber chi. Jun Jianqing suddenly felt a strong pressure coming towards him. His face suddenly changed and he could not hide his horror. He then retreated quickly. Unfortunately, he was still one step too late. In an instant, the huge saber chi roared like a rolling wave. In the bloody scene, Jun Jianqing's body was destroyed. Hiss! Everyone's expression changed when they saw this scene, and they sucked in a breath of cold air. No one expected the saber chi that erupted from King Shang to be so terrifying. This! Yu Jingchen's eyes trembled and he was suddenly speechless. Nie Tian's face was gloomy. He then moved and came to the sky. He grabbed the void and a starlight whirlpool fell into his palm. It was the Earth Destruction Astral Soul. Without any hesitation, he directly placed the Earth Destruction Astral Soul into the 9 extremities. In the eyes of others, Jun Jianqing was already dead, but Nie Tian knew that Jun Jianqing would soon be reborn in the Earth-extinguishing Star Soul. However, at that very moment, Nie Tian suddenly felt an ice-cold killing intent appear and lock onto him like a giant invisible hand. He raised his head and looked at King Shang who was in the sky above the arena. His eyes. King Shang's eyes. Swordsman. King Confirmant's eyes were filled with killing intent as he coldly spat out 2 words. Nie Tian, on the other hand, frowned. His face was incomparably gloomy, cold, and murderous. You shouldn't have appeared in front of me, King Shang said coldly. He then took a step forward and a gigantic saber chi appeared in the sky. It was like a mountain that pressed down on Nie Tian. Huh! Nie Tian's eyes narrowed. He didn't expect King Shang to attack directly. Bang! Right at this moment, a strand of sword chi appeared in the sky with the momentum of a swimming dragon, and it attacked to forcefully block the enormous saber shadow. King Shang, I'm your opponent. A silhouette landed beside Nie Tian and spoke to King Shang cold. It was Yu Jingchen. Yu Jingchen! King Shang's eyes were extremely gloomy. He shouted out his name and said, Between you and me, there will be no end until one of us dies. Yu Jingchen was not afraid at all. He smiled coldly and said, King Shang, if you want to fight, I will accompany you anytime. Do you dare to fight now? King Shang spoke in a low voice, his aura overbearing. Why wouldn't I dare? Yu Jingchen laughed coldly. He then took a step forward and a wave of sword chi shot up into the sky. It was like a sharp blade that was about to tear the sky apart. Nie Tian was the closest to Yu Jingchen and he could feel the aura of Yu Jingchen's sword will. His eyes trembled and he was extremely shocked. Even though he had broken through to the 9th sky of the Saint Realm, he was still far from Yu Jingchen's level. If the previous battle had been a battle of real strength, he would have most likely lost. Come! King Shang's body was burly and he roared. His voice was like a clap of thunder. Suddenly, a huge wave of saber chi filled the air and rushed in all directions. Bang! In the next moment, the saber chi and sword chi collided. There was a muffled sound in the air, and terrifying waves of chi spread out. It was as if the sky was falling and the earth was cracking. However, Yu Jingchen and King Shang were like mountains. They stood in the sky and did not move an inch. Nie Tian frowned slightly and he retreated a few thousand meters. If the two of them were to fight, it would not be easy to determine the winner. When the crowd saw the scene in the sky, their eyes lit up. They were obviously looking forward to the battle. King Shang and Yu Jingchen are both in the top 10 of the Hidden Sky list. Their battle will be incredible. One is ranked 8th and the other is ranked 9th. Their strength should be about the same. There will be a good show to watch. I heard that the two of them have fought a few times in order to compete for the ranking. Yu Jingchen lost more often than he won. I wonder what the result will be this time. The crowd discussed excitedly and waited for the show to begin. Although the elimination round was also very exciting, it was very rare to see battles between strong cultivators, especially those who were at the peak of the Hidden Dragon battle. King Shang and Yu Jingchen were undoubtedly the top cultivators of the Hidden Dragon battle this time. They might even be candidates to compete for the title of Wu Kuei. Their battle was naturally the focus of the crowd. Yu Jingchen, you and I have fought 3 times, and you have survived all of them. In the sky, King Confirmant coldly said, but this time, you won't be so lucky. Is that so? Yu Jingchen smiled coldly and his eyes were filled with arrogance. He had lost before, but that did not mean that he would lose this time. It had been a few years since his last battle with King Shang. His strength was no longer what it used to be. He was very confident that he could defeat King Shang. Chapter 40-58. What a terrifying saber! When the spectators felt the terrifying aura emanating from Ghost Rend, they couldn't help but tremble in fear. The moment Nye Tian saw Ghost split, his eyes flickered, and his expression flickered. Other than the powerful saber chi, he could also feel an even more demonic aura from Ghost Rend. It felt like the power of a bloodline, but it also felt like the aura of a curse. Nye Tian, this fellow's saber is a little strange. At this time, Fat Cat spoke. Nye Tian nodded. The fact that Fat Cat didn't explain in detail meant that she didn't see the problem with King Shang's saber. Nye Tian frowned. He couldn't help but worry for Yu Jingchen. What are you two doing? Just when the two of them were about to start fighting, a majestic voice rang out as a silhouette descended from the sky. That silhouette was as heavy as a mountain, causing the entire space to sink. In an instant, the power of the saber and sword shattered, and both King Shang and Yu Jingchen were forced to retreat. The two of them stabilized themselves and looked at the figure in the sky. It was the host of the Hidden Dragon battle, the Heavenly Dao Martial Palace's inner Dean Elder Zhou Yu. King Shang and Yu Jingchen's faces sank, but they didn't dare to speak. No matter how arrogant they didn't dare to show any disrespect in front of Zhou Yu. This is the Hidden Dragon battle, not a place for you to fight. Zhou Yu's face darkened and he said in a cold tone, if you want to fight, then fight until the last moment of the Hidden Dragon battle. Let everyone see who is the true expert. King Shang and Yu Jingchen didn't dare to speak, and they could only silently agree. Zhou Yu had personally appeared, so they naturally didn't dare to disobey. Continue. Zhou Yu didn't say anything else. He looked cold at the judge on the stage and nodded. Yes. The judge nodded and signaled King Shang and Yu Jingchen to step down. Stage 4-6-6, Hidden Dragon number 2045 vs Hidden Dragon number 268. Then, the judge announced the next battle. At the same time, his expression was a little strange, as if he had thought of something. When Nye Tian heard these two hidden dragons, he couldn't help but be stunned. It seemed like Hidden Dragon 2045 was Yu Jingchen. Huh! Yu Jingchen was slightly taken aback, and he stopped moving. At the same time, King Shang's figure also stopped. He suddenly turned around to look at Yu Jingchen and sneered, Yu Jingchen, it seems like the heavens want us to fight. Hidden Dragon number 267 and number 8, it was him. When the crowd saw this, their eyes trembled, and their expressions became excited. Who would have thought that right after Zhou Yu stopped the battle between King Shang and Yu Jingchen, the two of them would meet in the arena? Just as King Shang had said, the heavens had allowed them to fight. Zhou Yu had yet to leave. His old face immediately darkened as he glared at the judge cold. He then said, "This elder will personally be the judge for this match." This. Everyone looked at Zhou Yu, and they couldn't help but be stunned. Zhou Yu was an inner courtyard elder of the Heavenly Dao Martial Palace, and he was also the host of the Hidden Dragon battle. Yet, he was actually going to personally be the judge? Wasn't this giving King Shang and Yu Jingchen too much face? While everyone was still in shock, Zhou Yu's figure had already landed on the stage. Following which, King Shang and Yu Jingchen moved at the same time, landing on the stage. The two of you, listen up. This is an arena, not a life and death stage. This elder hopes that the two of you won't go too far. Zhou Yu's expression was gloomy as he glanced at King Shang and Yu Jingchen. It was obvious that he didn't want the two of them to fight to the death. From the looks of it, Zhou Yu wasn't a bad person. At the very least, he was someone who cherished talent. King Shang and Yu Jingchen nodded, but their auras didn't weaken in the slightest. It was obvious that they were prepared to fight with their full strength. Zhou Yu frowned and shook his head. He had already decided in his heart that if there was a need, he would intervene. Boom! Boom! Right at that moment, King Shang and Yu Jingchen released their auras at the same time. They were like two mountains, but one was a majestic mountain range, while the other was a towering mountain peak. These two fellows are so terrifying. Everyone's eyes trembled with excitement and nervousness. They were even more excited than if they were the ones fighting. Nie Tian noticed that even Xiao Wanjie, Gong Yu, and Gui Zigui had come to watch the battle. King Shang and Yu Jingchen were both ranked in the top 10 of the Hidden Sky list, and they were enough to pose a threat to them. It was normal for them to come and watch the battle. Boom! Right at that moment, on the stage, King Shang and Yu Jingchen didn't waste any time and attacked directly. A huge blade shadow and a sharp sword shadow collided. Suddenly, the void exploded, and a terrifying wave of air rolled out, wreaking havoc in the void. In the next moment, King Shang and Yu Jingchen both retreated at the same time. After they stabilized themselves, they both vomited blood. King Shang was injured by the sharp sword shadow, and Yu Jingchen was injured by the powerful blade shadow. Everyone's eyes trembled violently, and their faces were filled with shock. Who would have thought that the battle had just begun and Ling Xian was already going all out? Zhou Yu stood coldly in the air, and his old face was gloomy. He had just warned them not to overdo it, and the two of them were already fighting to the death. They were really giving face to him, the referee. Nie Tian glanced at Zhou Yu, and his heart calmed down a little. With Zhou Yu around, at least Yu Jingchen's life wouldn't be in danger. Zhou Yu would naturally be the referee for this battle, and he wouldn't let anything happen to the two geniuses. Very good. In the sky, King Shang roared, and the blade qi around his body surged like the sea. It rumbled in the void, and it sounded like thousands of beasts were galloping. Yu Jingchen, on the other hand, was surrounded by a murderous sword qi, and his entire body seemed to be standing in the middle of a storm. Looking at the stance of the two, the battle between the blade and the sword would only end when one of them died. Kill! Immediately after, King Shang attacked again, and the ghost rend slashed across the void. The blade's shadow was like a mountain, and it fell with a loud bang. The heavenly Tao seemed to sink, and it seemed to be wailing under a huge pressure. At the same time, Yu Jingchen moved like lightning, an endless sword intent gathered in an instant. It was the sixth move of the Qin shocking 9 swords, the 6 harmonies heaven and earth. Boom! Bang bang bang! In the next instant, the blade and the sword collided, and endless energy exploded, turning into endless waves that crazily rushed out, and the heavens and earth were thrown into chaos. Everyone looked up at the sky, and they could only see the blade light and the sword shadow flickering. They couldn't see King Shang and Yu Jingchen at all. After a long time, the void gradually calmed down, and the two figures appeared again, standing as cold as a mountain. Nie Tian's eyes narrowed slightly, and he saw that Yu Jingchen's body had several bloody wounds, and his face was slightly pale. It was obvious that his injuries were not light. As for King Shang, the blade qi around his body was even more vigorous than before. It seemed like the battle just now hadn't affected King Shang's strength at all, and it had even made him stronger. Could it be that this guy's strength is endless? Nie Tian frowned, and he felt strange. Even someone with a strong martial body like him would be at a disadvantage after such a high-intensity battle. However, King Shang was getting stronger and stronger, and it was very strange.